We address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
A very busy show tonight. In the clash, should people born male be allowed to participate in female sport? We'll debate that with legendary campaigner Peter Tatchell and feminist author Kelly J. Keane. We'll head live to the Hollywood Hills for the latest in the world of entertainment with the queen of US showbiz and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield, including a verdict that's got left-wing America in a spin. And my Mark Meets guest tonight is one of the best-known faces on British TV. Property expert and star of Homes Under the Hammer, Martin Roberts, is live at 10. Plus, My Big Opinion is coming straight after the news headlines with Karen Roberts.
Hello, these are your latest headlines. 30 demonstrators have been arrested after they blocked Lambeth Bridge in a show of solidarity for 9 jailed Insulate Britain protesters. The bridge has reopened to traffic and a demonstration at Vauxhall Cross has also been cleared. Meanwhile, Vauxhall Bridge is now open southbound. Activists had described the so-called Highway 9 as political prisoners. Insulate Britain spokesperson Craig Scudder told GB News many environmental groups are now backing their campaign.
What we're experiencing today is not an Insulate Britain thing. This is, I think, going to be a show of ordinary people from a variety of different environmental groups and backgrounds just coming to push back and rebel.
Video has been released purportedly showing missing Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai having dinner with friends. The video, which can't be independently verified, was posted by a state media journalist on Twitter. It doesn't give details on when the footage was taken. The Wimbledon doubles champion disappeared nearly 3 weeks ago after accusing a former top government official of sexual assault on social media. The Women's Tennis Association welcomed the video's release but said it remains unclear if Peng Shuai is free and able to make decisions and take actions on her own. Taxpayers could be liable for up to £335 million after a government-backed bank failed to properly scrutinise collapsed lender Greensill Capital. An MP's report found British business bank checks on the company were woefully inadequate. Former Prime Minister David Cameron was an advisor, and it's emerged that he used his position to make dozens of calls to senior government officials, including the Chancellor. He tried to secure funds during the pandemic before the lender's collapse, leading to several investigations. Campaigners have held a protest at the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, demanding post-Brexit arrangements to be protected. The crowd at Carrickcanan have warned the UK government against triggering Article 16, which would suspend post-Brexit elements currently in place. Unionists have opposed the Northern Ireland Protocol, objecting to the idea of a trade barrier with Great Britain. Negotiations between the UK and the EU are ongoing. Octopuses, crabs and lobsters have feelings too. That's according to a new study. The research by the London School of Economics and Political Science says there's strong scientific evidence which proves the animals experience pain, distress or harm. It's prompted the government to add the sea creatures to an animal welfare protection list by recognising them as sentient beings. You're right up to date now. Back to Mark Dolan tonight.
It's Saturday, November the 20th. You're watching Mark Dolan tonight. A busy show this evening. A perfect Saturday night blend of information, stimulation and entertainment. And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. My Mark Meets guest is the property expert, investor, entrepreneur and host of BBC One's Homes Under the Hammer, Martin Roberts. Can't wait for that. Martin has had an incredible career and an amazing life. He tells us his story at 10. In the clash, should people born male then go on to participate in female sport? We'll speak to legendary gay rights campaigner Peter Tatchell and Kelly J. Keane, founder of the feminist group Standing for Women. In Frequently Asked Questions, what the hell is cryptocurrency? What is Bitcoin? Do you need it? We'll speak to a cryptocurrency billionaire and Hollywood movie star, Brock Pierce. He's live at 10:35. Can't wait for that one. We also always have a frank conversation at 11 in Uncensored. And tonight, it's the queen of US showbiz and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey will be speaking live from Hollywood, California, about a court verdict that the liberal left in America are raging about. It's a remarkable story. You won't want to miss it. Plus, my all-star panel tonight of broadcaster Ingrid Tarrant, author and journalist Emily Hill, and former head of Labour Leave, Labour councillor and commentator Brendan Chilton. But my priority for the next 3 hours is to get your views on the national television airwaves. So drop me an email now and throughout the show, mark@gbnews.uk. The best bit of my show is when you tell me what you think. I love it. This show is made exclusively for you. It's about you. And that's the only show in town. So a big 3 hours to come. Who needs the pub? Save yourself a fortune, grab something cold from the fridge, or fire up the kettle and tear open the dark chocolate digestives. And let's get to work. What's happening in Austria is the reason why we cannot stand idly by and say nothing, as the fundamental values of a free society, democracy, freedom, bodily autonomy, face an egregious assault. Not satisfied with locking down the unvaccinated, which involves separating and segregating a group of people within the population, not a great look for a country with a history like Austria's. Notwithstanding this, and the huge outcry from the 2 million people unvaccinated in Austria, far from retreating, the Austrians have dug in and have gone one step further by announcing that the COVID-19 vaccine will be mandatory for all citizens as of February next year. I honestly don't know how this can be legal. I suspect it's not legal. The mandating of a medical procedure is utterly unprecedented. And how's it going to work logistically? Will people be fined if they don't have the vaccine? And if so, does that mean that the poor will be the low-hanging fruit for the jab? You know, you've run out of money to pay the fines, so it's time for the needle. Will the unvaccinated ultimately go to jail? Ironically, housed in crowded conditions with other inmates sends a mixed message, doesn't it? Or perhaps vaccine vans will just drive around the streets, bundling suspected unjabbed citizens into the back of the vehicle, perhaps gaffer taping them to the floor or knocking them about a bit. That might lubricate the passage of the needle into their arms. This is why I made a stand about masks all those months ago. I don't have a problem with face coverings per se. It's the M word, mandate, which is the problem, and that was the problem at the time. Sweden were, in my view, the way to go, and latterly, states in America like Florida and Texas who allowed the public, you and me, to make a judgment about the risk. For example, here's a very useful graph comparing no lockdown Sweden to medical segregation Austria. Very timely, and I think you'll see that the figures there, the cases in Austria, through the roof, Sweden flatlining. The argument for this is even more powerful now that the vaccine is available to all. If you're worried, you get the jab and you're protected. Jab done, job done. If the vaccines work, why mandate them? If they don't work, why mandate them? Seems pretty logical to me, but logic has been another casualty of this pandemic. If COVID passports, which link your medical status to certain freedoms and public services, is medical segregation, then surely a mandate to have the vaccine is medical fascism. I don't think that's too strong a word. And that's why I must speak out. And I speak out, I believe, with some authority, given that I'm double vaccinated and I will take the booster. But that's my choice. I couldn't give an arse what goes into your arm. I don't care. I don't want to know. I will never be interested. It's your body. It's your business. From 3 weeks to flatten the curve, to mask mandates, and now a vaccine mandate, what we are seeing goes beyond the worst conspiracy theories. It's playing out before our very eyes. It's not conspiracy, it's policy. Credit to the Prime Minister Boris Johnson for pushing back on all of these measures in England. Plan B restrictions, vaccine passports, mask mandates, and long may that continue. England has been a Sweden tribute band since Freedom Day on July the 19th. Both countries have taken a voluntary approach to measures, and hey presto, cases fell. In England, Sweden and elsewhere, freedom as a policy appears to be achieving our freedom from the virus, potentially by boosting natural immunity among the healthy population. Who knows? Who knows? That is the view of some experts. Even some of the most pessimistic scientific voices believe there will be no hellish winter spike in the UK. Sage advisor Professor John Edmonds is quoted as saying just that in today's Mail newspaper. Fascinating article. There it is. Sage advisor says the UK will not see a spike in COVID cases like Austria and Germany. Fantastic news. And yet, across Europe and around the world, countries whose failing policies see them double down on vaccine passports are watching cases rise. Even Nicola Sturgeon has offered no evidence that COVID passports north of the border have stopped infection, a story reported in this week's Spectator by their excellent writer, Michael Simmons. There's the article. Sturgeon's 70-page dossier finds no evidence for vaccine passports. Quelle surprise. But why let facts get in the way of policy? Now, I'm pro-vaccine. It's clearly effective against severe illness, and I'm incredibly happy that our most vulnerable are safer now than they were a year ago. COVID is a very nasty virus, potentially, which has claimed too many lives, and it can threaten capacity in the NHS. But not right now. And here's the truth. COVID has an average rate from sad deaths of over 80 years of age and is non-fatal to almost everyone. Nasty though it is, COVID is not bad enough, and the vaccine is frankly not good enough to justify this tyranny. Remember, the king of the jab himself, Bill Gates, said it only slightly blocks transmission. To quote Professor Carol Sikora, respected oncologist of 5 decades and an unmissable regular on Dan Wootton's brilliant show, he said the following: "Words can't describe how outraged I am by the policy of compulsory vaccinations. It's not how public health should be conducted. Consent is essential. I disagree with vaccine passports, but this is an entirely new level of unacceptable." How right he is. Very rare but still documented vaccine side effects are the responsibility of the patient who chooses to get jabbed or not. By mandating the jab, the Austrian state is potentially by law injuring its citizens and at worst killing them. And that's why the Austrians and anyone else considering mandating vaccines has crossed a line. That's right, Austria has crossed a line. These measures must be met with peaceful legal resistance, because otherwise there's no end to this. And it's the fundamental values of our country and society that are at stake. The alternative is not an option. What we've learned over the last 18 months, accepting endless measures at huge cost and, in my view, with limited reward, is that here's the thing, and this is the headline: you cannot comply your way out of tyranny. Now, Big Bird is in the news, folks. The Sesame Street character, a 6-foot yellow bird, has been banned from attending the US Conservative Political Action Conference. This has been announced this week. The iconic star was told he was not welcome at the 2022 Florida event following a tweet from Big Bird claiming to have had the COVID-19 vaccine. That's right, the bird has had the vaccine. Now, I know the vaccine rollout's been going well, but I didn't realise they were now jabbing poultry. Now, I'm not one for cancelling people or poultry, so I think Big Bird should be reinstated. But is it really the job of children's TV characters to advise their young audiences on medical procedures? I thought Sesame Street was there to teach them the alphabet and entertain them with stories and songs and to teach them numbers. But to me, none of this adds up. From which other characters are we to seek medical information? I wonder what Danger Mouse thinks about the flu jab. Is Peppa Pig worried about polio or swine flu, frankly? What is Scooby-Doo's view on the MMR? Probably thinks you should Scooby-Dooby-Doo it. Yikes. It's bad enough that Tesco used their Christmas ads to push the message of COVID passports. Now children's characters are brainwashing youngsters to have a medication statistically they don't need. Don't take my word for it. The JCVI, who advised the government on vaccines, ruled against jabbing the under-16s. But what do they know? The font of all knowledge now is Big Bird, or should I say an out-of-work actor in a bird costume on a TV show. And anyway, this fluffy yellow monstrosity should be more worried about the bird flu, shouldn't he? This whole bird business is foul, and I'm spitting feathers. With Christmas coming, the only thing that Big Bird should do is get stuffed. A really busy 3 hours coming up. With me for the duration of the programme is my all-star panel, presenter and social commentator Ingrid Tarrant, author and journalist Emily Hill, and Chief Executive of the Independent Business Network, Brendan Chilton. Wonderful to have all three of you with me. Ingrid, your reaction to the news from Austria?
I'm horrified. It frightens me that this could be the way that we're going, except I'm just loving the way that they're rebelling. It's happening in Holland as well, and it's so wrong. It is so wrong. And as you say, I mean, what are they going to do next? Like, cut them off in vans and pin them down, and it's frightening and it's terrible. And I can't believe that this is happening in this day and age, in this stage of our lives, and we've learnt nothing about anything.
Emily Hill.
Oh, completely agree with everything both yourself and Ingrid have said. I mean, we're going to have to start taking refugees from Austria again, aren't we? It's unbelievable that this is happening. And also, when is it going to go away? That's what really scares me. Like, why would the vaccine passports then be taken away? When does the emergency end? We're still living under emergency powers here, even though there doesn't seem to be much reason to have them at all. What's going on in Scotland and Wales is also worrying. For once, I feel very glad to be living in England. So.
And Brendan Chilton, where Austria leads, others will follow. This won't be, I don't think, the last country to mandate the vaccine. I think they've set a dangerous precedent.
I agree. I go to Austria every year. I think it's a fine and beautiful country. But this news that's come out this week has really shocked me. And I've got friends in Austria who are absolutely astounded that the new Chancellor has announced this. You're quite right. Other countries are looking at what's going on in Austria. I think Germany's even suggested they're going to follow suit as well. If they can keep people locked up at home because they've not been jabbed. They can keep them locked up at home for anything. And it can be things right now, we might think them farcical. You know, are you a member of a certain political party? Are you a trade unionist? Do you work for a certain profession? And if we don't draw the line now, this could come back to haunt us in a much more horrible way by a less benevolent government than the one we have now. So it's got to be 100% resisted.
However, Brendan, ICU capacity in Austria, I've been reading today, is close to breaking point. The authorities would argue that with just 60% of the population vaccinated, a far lower take-up than here in the UK, that they have to do this because they're saving lives.
Well, there are two aspects to this as well. The first thing you've got to remember is I believe Austria went along with the European procurement of the vaccine, which of course was much slower than our one. And the second thing with Austria, perhaps the geography of the country is quite important. It is extremely mountainous, and there are a lot of people that live in extremely remote places that are not very easily accessible. I know it's in Central Europe, but particularly in the winter months, there are parts of the country that essentially become micro-communities because they can't get out into other parts because of the snow. And so there are issues like that we don't necessarily think of here. But you've also got to remember, too, there are some people that can't have the vaccine for medical reasons. Also, there are pregnant women are said, you know, they shouldn't have the vaccine because they're carrying a child and it could have an impact on the pregnancy. So it's really an irrational decision that the government there have made to say all those without the vaccine are essentially under martial law, and it completely disregards those other variables that we've just spoken about.
Emily, in America, a 6-foot yellow bird is telling child viewers that he's had the vaccine. Is this the right kind of role model?
It's just Fauciism has taken over, hasn't it? It's genuinely very, very, very odd.
Do you think Fauci is actually the one inside the Big Bird outfit?
Possibly.
Actually, I don't think he's that tall.
No, he's not. Maybe
he is a chicken, though.
I think Fauci's got cult status over there.
Did you say cult? It's a family show, Emily.
All the jokes tonight, Mark. It's just bizarre. I can't really explain it, actually. I'm afraid I've got no answers.
Well, I just wonder, Ingrid, whether it's an example of the DNA of corporations. You know, in the case of Sesame Street, the TV company, the network that broadcasts the show, but we've got Tesco with Santa waving his COVID pass at the airport. I feel that, you know, we've got big state, we've got big pharma, and now we've got big business as well, all pushing the vaccine agenda. And I can't stress enough that I'm pro-vaccine, but I don't want it rammed down my throat or in my arm.
No, I do respect that so much in you, Mark, and you're going to have the booster as well. So you're recognising that it's a personal decision, personal choice, and we should be allowed to make those personal choices. Also, the data that's coming out, and it's not really fully out there in any case, is not suggesting that it's brilliant and it's fantastic. There's a lot of flaws with this vaccination. There are a lot of side effects that aren't being reported. You've said as well about the under-16s, the JVCI said no, but sort of Sage is saying yes. Why? But going back to sort of like Big Bird and Father Christmas and Tesco, this is the biggest advertising campaign, I think, that's ever existed. They are trying to get into the psyche. It's like luring the child with the low-level sweets and little gifts inside the cereal packets and everything, and just taking them down that road because, you know, they're trying to get children to agree to it and to be able even to make their own decisions. I think it's so disgusting. To me, it's so transparent what this is all about. It's money, it's manipulation. I hate it.
And of course, you know, there are many, perhaps the majority of the public and the government, who would say that we should be very grateful for the availability of this vaccine, that people should go for it and that it will save lives. Brendan, I don't know how much of a viewer you've been of Sesame Street over the years. Big Bird's had the jab. I wonder about the guy in the dustbin. He looks like an anti-vaxxer to me. Oscar the Grouch.
I think he probably...
I mean, he's a born contrarian. He lives in a bin, for God's sakes.
He is. He's a Trump voter, anti-vax. He does a lot.
Listen, I think you'll agree we are travelling business class with my amazing panel tonight. I'm so excited to have Emily, Ingrid and Brendan with me for the whole show. And they're going to return early this hour. That's right, we'll see them at 9:45 for an early news agenda in which they react to the big stories of the day. And I'll be asking them about the following. Should we diminish someone's experience if they themselves are guilty of behaving badly? We'll discuss that. It's all about your historic tweets and whether that should affect how you're judged today. We'll get to that very, very shortly. But next, in the clash, should trans women participate in female sport? Peter Tatchell, legendary human rights campaigner, will be going up against Kelly J. Keane. Sparks will fly. See you in 2. But don't forget that we want to hear from you. So in our Twitter poll, get your opinion over via the debate on Twitter. That's what we're looking for, is an answer from you, the viewers. And don't forget the email address as well, mark@gbnews.uk. See you shortly.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
So many emails coming in response to my big opinion, which of course happens at 3 minutes past 9 every Friday, Saturday and Sunday. I'm delighted to say that George and our social media team are currently editing the big opinion section, and it will be available on GB News in the next couple of minutes. But Bob has emailed, "Dear Mark, what a twist. Austria, probably followed by Germany, segregating its population at the altar of dogma. They'll be burning books next. Oops, did I say that out loud?" And then he goes on to quote Edmund Burke, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing." Well, there you go. We'll get to more of your thoughts very shortly, but it's time now for The Clash, in which we tackle a big topic of the day from opposing points of view. Transgender women should not be forced to reduce their testosterone levels to compete in sports, the new International Olympic Committee guidelines have said. This fresh new framework also states that no athlete should be excluded from the competition on the grounds of a perceived unfair and disproportionate advantage due to their gender. The guidelines will replace ones from 2015 and reverses the IOC's previous stance on transgender athletes. Previously, the transgender women athletes were only allowed to compete providing that their testosterone levels were below the required limit 12 months before their first competition. "You don't need to use testosterone to decide who can compete at all," said the IOC medical director, Richard Budgett. So is this move an important moment of inclusion for trans women, or is it the death of competitive women's sport? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome legendary gay rights campaigner and human rights campaigner, frankly, a star of his own Netflix documentary, Being Peter Tatchell, produced by Sir Elton John. It's the one and only Peter Tatchell. Opposite him is Kelly J. Keane, the founder of the campaign group Standing for Women. Kelly J., welcome to the programme. What's your view about this latest ruling in regard to testosterone levels?
It's absolutely insane, isn't it? We know that men have an advantage in all sorts of ways due to a variety of their physical bodies. Testosterone is like a supercharge on all of the other advantages. So for the IOC, which is a body that governs how bodies actually participate in sport and perform, for them to suddenly say that a man's feelings is more important than the body he's in when it comes to then entering into female sports is just, I just have no idea what sort of conversations they must have had to reach such a foolish and dangerous conclusion.
What do you think has motivated this decision? Because it doesn't sound like science to me.
I think there's some very, very clever, well-networked individuals that have infiltrated sensible organisations, and now nobody can really speak up, and certainly nobody's talking about women. So when we talk about whether or not these men can participate in women's sports, we're not actually really considering what the outcome will be for women. And as you rightly say or suggest, it will be the death of women's sports.
However, Kelly J., would you not accept that trans women are women and any other view is transphobic?
Absolutely not. Not in a month of Sundays would I ever suggest that men can be women. So no.
Well, Peter Tatchell, what's your view on this? You've been a campaigner for human rights and gay rights for decades now. We've spoken previously on the programme. Your documentary is a must-watch. You're a very principled person, but is this one really a hill to die on?
Well, I am not trans. I don't speak on behalf of the trans community, but I am a trans ally and have been for over 50 years. And that's because I'm a human rights defender. And I know from my experience that trans people are the victims of incredible levels of prejudice, discrimination, harassment, and even violence. So I want to see the trans community defended and respected. When it comes to women's sport, the jury is really out on the advantages of testosterone levels. There is some evidence that they may be influential, but the amount of advantage they give is very disputed. What I would say is that under the old rules, even biological women were penalized by those rules. For example, there were two very great Namibian athletes whose natural testosterone levels were above the IOC levels. So even though they were biological women, they were not allowed to compete. And that was very, very unfair. On the question of advantage, we know that nearly all elite athletes have some kind of advantage. So, for example, if you have fast twitch muscle fibers, that gives you an advantage in sprinting. If you have extra large lungs or hearts, that gives you an advantage in endurance events. Michael Phelps, the multi-Olympic gold medal winner, he had extra long arms, large hands, and large webbed feet, and that gave him an advantage in the pool. So my question is, why are trans people being singled out? Because they may perhaps have some small advantage. I look at athletes, I look at trans athletes I know, they are no bigger physiologically or stronger than biological women. I look at biological women and I see some, for example, in the women's English rugby team who are absolute biological women. They're not trans, but they are big, they are strong, they are heavily muscled, in some cases much more so than their teammates and opposing teams. So I just think we have to be careful, because excluding people from sport is a very dangerous road to go around unless there is really strong, compelling scientific evidence. And right now, there isn't.
Kelly J?
I don't think that anybody who calls himself trans should be excluded from sports. Of course, that would be terrible. And there are categories that men who call themselves trans can compete in, and it's called the men's category. I think what the danger is with the IOC is I wonder what they're waiting for. It's the same with World Rugby, England Rugby, Welsh Rugby. I'm just wondering, are they waiting for the first broken spine, maybe the first fatality of a woman being wrestled to the floor and killed? And Peter has made this example before about large women who play rugby, but the men are much, much larger who also play rugby. 200 of the world's fastest men can beat the world's fastest woman at 100 metres. Serena Williams would be about 700 if she was competing in the men's category. So I think we have to be really clear. It feels quite strange having to have a discussion about whether or not we think men are stronger, that men have more endurance, that men's muscles are infinitely stronger than women's. Each muscle fibre of a man, their bone density, the fact that their hips are not as supple, the fact that they don't menstruate, the fact that women have 1/20th, up to 1/20th of a man's testosterone. I mean, all of these things, common sense, women and men right throughout the UK know that having men competing in women's sports is absolutely outrageous.
And the point is, Peter, you've conflated, I'll let you respond, Peter, but you've conflated the appalling abuse and prejudice towards trans people, which we can all three of us agree is horrific and unacceptable. You conflated that with exclusion from gendered sport, and they are separate things. Look at Caitlyn Jenner, one of the most famous, perhaps the most famous trans woman in the world, and a former Olympic athlete herself, and she said that trans women participating in female sport is wrong. He said it's unfair. She said it's unfair. Forgive me.
Well, I absolutely agree that all sport, including women's sport, must be fair. So I would favour individual assessment, not a generalised ban on trans women, but individual assessment. If someone can be demonstrably shown to have an unfair advantage because of their testosterone levels or any other advantage because they were born biologically male, then I think there is a case where perhaps they should be excluded. But what I really object to is a generalized ban on all trans women, when I know from my own personal networks and friends that there are trans women competing in sports who are physiologically just about the same as the average biological woman in terms of muscle strength, bone density, height and weight. So I don't see any reason why those trans women should be excluded.
But here's the point,
yes,
Peter,
let's be fair.
It doesn't matter that, you know, testosterone, muscle mass, you name it. These are all red herrings. The bottom line is that if you listen to Professor Robert Winston, who's one of the most respected experts on reproduction in the country, and this is the man who said on the Question Time programme on the BBC recently that there are just two biological sexes and it's impossible to change your biological sex. Every cell in your body defines you as male or female. So you don't have to do any investigation. You don't have to check someone's pulse or do a blood sample. If they've got a penis and testicles, they're biological male. And if they have a vagina and a cervix, they're female. End of.
Well, I agree. There is such a thing as biological sex, and it's very, very, very important. But there's also another thing called gender identity. And I would say that that is equally legitimate and valid, and that we shouldn't be arguing against one and the other. We should be respecting the difference. Now, biological sex, I understand exactly why many women's campaigners emphasize biological sex. And I do not want to wish that away or pretend it is not important. But I'm simply saying that when it comes to trans women competing in women's sports, I think we need to have a conversation. We need to do more research, more evaluation, and in particular, as I said, shift to individual assessment. Where there is a demonstrable advantage by one particular trans woman, who is examined and determined, then of course that would be unfair for that person to have that advantage. But having said that, I still feel uncomfortable because we don't make these distinctions when it comes to people who've got other advantage like extra large hearts and lungs or twitch muscle fibers.
But
we
Peter,
don't make an issue to get them banned.
Peter, why has sport always been segregated along gender lines? Why do men play the best of 5 sets at Wimbledon in the final and women the best of 3? Men are stronger than women.
Well, as a general rule, yes. But I don't think you can generalise. That's the whole point. You can't generalise.
Does that mean, Peter, that only weak trans women should participate in female sport? Just the rubbish ones?
Well, I wouldn't use the term weak trans woman, but I'd say that where trans women do not have a demonstrable, scientifically proven advantage in terms of height, weight, testosterone or other factors, where that can be shown, then there may be a legitimate case for them to be excluded. So I'm not closing the door on it. I want the conversation to continue. I want more research to be done. I want more science to be brought to the table.
Well, you see, Peter, I want this conversation to end, not to continue, because the bottom line is that you will never scientifically identify a potential advantage that a trans woman has over a biological female. You'll never have that answer. The bottom line is that a trans woman is born a male and therefore does have a male physiology. And I don't think you'll ever do enough Inspector Sherlock Holmes work on this one to get the definitive answer. Kelly J, what's your view?
Well, I'd be very interested if there was a man who had the same bone density and proportions as a woman. I find that quite impossible, since even one of the things we do as women is we recognise a gait. So we can, even without my very strong contact lenses in, I can see a man a mile off just from the way he walks. So I do think we need to sort of park the idea that there are any men on the planet that are exactly the same proportion as a biological woman. That's just nonsense.
But Kelly J, how someone walks is not really a particularly scientific acid test of gender, is it?
No, of course it's not. It's not an acid test of biological sex. It's just one of the many things that are characteristically one sex or another. It's just a frivolous comment. But when it comes to women's sports, it's not just about elite sports. It's about sports right the way through, from school sports, how important it is for girls to have girl-only space, to feel comfortable, to feel like they can make a fool of themselves. The camaraderie of single-sex spaces and sports is really important. The privacy and dignity in those changing rooms. So it's so massive an issue, and it really is a condensed one that I think men can really understand the differences and what women are facing when it comes to the sport debate in particular, because I think everybody can just look at any Olympics that we want to throughout history, and you can see the difference between the male and female competition and competitors.
Kelly J, are you transphobic? Kelly J, important question, Peter. Kelly J, are you transphobic?
Well, transphobia really means right in this moment that I'm not willing to participate in an ideology that I don't think makes any sense, which is to say that men can be women and women can be men. And if that means that I will be labelled transphobic, then so be it. I'm willing to have the label if it means I can speak the truth.
Would you acknowledge that Caitlyn Jenner is a woman and that she is she?
No. No, I think it erases, when we start diluting language, we start erasing rights, as we're seeing just in this conversation. By allowing some men to be called trans women, we're now discussing them participating in our sports. By allowing men to be called trans women, we've now got sexual predators entering into women-only spaces and exposing themselves. So I think it's a really foolish thing that we've done. If a man wants to identify as whatever he wants to call himself, that's absolutely fine. I wish him all the luck in the world.
Kelly J, would you not refer to Caitlyn as she?
No, absolutely not.
I think I think is perhaps rather intolerant of you, because I agree with you about there being two genders, and I think that trans women participating in women's sport is completely unacceptable. But if I had a colleague, a friend or a family member that identified by a different gender, then I would refer to them with that chosen gendered pronoun.
And that's entirely up to you. And I wouldn't go out of my way to make someone feel uncomfortable. So I'd probably use, I don't know, they, if they were in front of me. But it's very rare that we talk about somebody's pronouns in front of them. I don't really feel that I have to be compelled to use language that I don't feel makes sense. And so I don't do it.
Peter.
Can I just give you just a practical example? I have a friend. She is a trans woman and she plays football. She is one of the smallest women on the team. She is towered over by some of the biological women on that team. So she's a classic example of why we shouldn't generalize. We got to really, really be careful before we start excluding people.
But what happens?
And I just think that,
Peter, what happens if Cristiano Ronaldo? What if Cristiano Ronaldo identifies as Christine Ronaldo and plays in women's football? It'll be like 27-0 at the end of 90 minutes. Well,
I think there probably would be scientific evidence to say that Cristiano Ronaldo had an unfair advantage.
Your entire argument is based on weak, tiny, small, miniature trans women participating in women's sport. You're essentially whitewashing over the fact that predominantly and in large part men are bigger and stronger than women. End of.
Yeah, I agree that in many cases women are smaller, less strong than men. But what I want to say is, in this particular case, this trans woman, she participates with the full acceptance of the rest of the football team, who are, I think, every single one of them biological women. And in terms of the size and strength, the height, the weight, and so on, she is almost the smallest in the team.
But Peter, I think
there's no reason why she should be excluded.
You've dodged the question.
Go on, give me the question again then.
Well, the question is, Cristiano Ronaldo identifies as Christine and plays a football match. I mean, going to destroy the opposition.
Yeah, I did answer that.
Sport. Your entire argument's predicated on small male athletes that identify as women.
I did answer that question. I said that if Cristiano Ronaldo did transition and become Christina, then I think it would be pretty clear that she had a significant and unfair advantage.
Well, then what's the point?
That's why people going back to individual assessment.
What's the point? It's so complicated. We're going to have medical examinations every time a trans woman wants to join a female team.
Well, I think that, as I said, I'm all in favour of there being more research and the amassing of evidence to establish fair rules so that as many trans women as possible can participate on an equal basis with equal respect. All I can say is, in the case of this trans woman who plays football, she's not the biggest or the best by a long shot, but she's there on the team. Other teammates tower over her, but so what? She's accepted, they love her, she loves them, they get on well. Surely that's all that matters.
Final thoughts on this, Kelly J.
Olympic Committee.
Kelly J?
Sorry. Yes.
Kelly J, she, her. Go for it.
What my final thoughts?
Please.
I think that the International Olympic Committee has really badly let women down. Any woman that loses her place to a man in female sports, who gets to the Olympics, who's trained her entire life, who loses out to what is often, as Peter has simply described, a mediocre man, then I think it's an absolute travesty. We've already seen that at the Olympics in the last year. Laurel Hubbard took the place of one of the Ireland women. And so, it's just balmy. Nobody thinks that men should be competing in women's sports. Common sense tells us all that is just a ridiculous idea.
Laurel Hubbard mentioned. Laurel Hubbard, she represented New Zealand at the Olympics, and she won the New Zealand Female Sports Performer of the Year. Kellyanne, reaction to that? Female Sports Star of the Year for New Zealand.
Well, it's outrageous, isn't it? By the way, it's Kelly J. But
Sorry, Kelly, apologies.
I feel misnamed. It's outrageous, isn't it? Because Caitlyn Jenner, I think, won the Woman of the Year, and he hadn't even been a woman for a whole year when he won that award. So, should Laurel Hubbard have won any sort of sporting award? I don't really think so, and certainly not a sporting award that should have gone to an actual woman. It's crazy.
Peter Tatchell, your final thoughts on this?
Well, my final thought is that I also have a different campaign going. For many years, I've argued that the automatic ban on women competing in, for example, football, I think is totally wrong. The Premier League or the Football Association has a ban on women competing in organised football in this country. And a local team that did take on a very talented woman player was actually fined by the Football Association for allowing a woman to compete, even though she had the merit, the talent, the skill and the strength. Now, I think there should be no automatic ban for women playing in the Premier League. If they are suitable, if they can qualify, gender should not be a reason for excluding them.
I'm your #1 fan, but that's a nonsense. There's no woman that's going to make it into a Premier League team. Maybe Arsenal, but seriously, the rest, absolutely no chance. But listen, thank you so much for sharing both of your thoughts. Peter, we love the documentary. It's out now on Netflix, Being Peter Tatchell. It's a credit to you and your career. And my profound thanks to Kelly J. Keane. Kelly J., it was great to have you on the programme. Please come back again soon. Kelly J. is the founder of Standing for Women, a very, very interesting organisation. Take a look at what they do online. Well, what do you think, folks? Do let me know. Mark at gbnews.uk. I'm delighted to say, via Twitter, your verdict is in. 97% of you say that trans women should not participate in female sport. 3% of you say they should. Do get your thoughts over, mark at gbnews.uk. Now, coming up with my panel after this, should Azim Rafiq's experience with racism be diminished because of past anti-Semitic messages? We'll debate that after the break. And coming up, in Mark Meets, it's Homes Under the Hammer presenter Martin Roberts. Martin Roberts, live at 10. So get your questions in to that email address I've just mentioned, mark at gbnews.uk. Tweet us using the handle at GBNews or Facebook your question by searching for GB News. And tonight's 2 Mark Big Opinion monologues are live on our Twitter right now. Big Bird, I'm spitting feathers. And Austria, welcome to hell. So head to Twitter and take a look at that. And I'll see you in 2.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
You're watching Tonight Live with me, Mark Dolan. So much to get through. Really excited about my panel tonight. Brendan Chilton, Emily Hill and Ingrid Tarrant. And they'll be reacting to tomorrow's newspaper front pages. We can't wait to get your reaction to some of these big stories as well. And don't forget the email address, mark@gbnews.uk. At 10 o'clock, the amazing, the legendary host of Homes Under the Hammer is joining us. So get your questions in, property questions, you name it, all in the company of Martin Roberts. He's lived quite the life, let me tell you, and he's got quite the story. But let's get to the first particular issue in our news agenda. Azim Rafiq has been in the headlines for opening up about the terrible institutional racism that he experienced at Yorkshire County Cricket Club. In the past few days, though, anti-Semitic messages he sent have come to light, throwing his reputation into disrepute. Responding to the messages, he said, "I am incredibly angry at myself and apologise to the Jewish community. I have absolutely no excuses. I am ashamed of this exchange. Any form of racism or prejudice is awful, but certainly people in the media are trying to delegitimise his own experiences. So is it double standards, or are humans allowed to be flawed? Shouldn't we work together to stamp out all forms of racism?" Emily, what's your view on this? Do you think that previous bad comments negate your suffering at the hands of others?
Some of the things that he says has happened to him, like having wine forcibly poured down his throat, is horrendous. I mean, that goes against the religion he comes from, and that is appalling. So there's no making comments himself that he regrets shouldn't negate his experience that's happened to him. But I think he's being given the opportunity to say, "I'm sorry and I wish I hadn't done it," and move on. And hopefully those who've done these things to him will also be given an opportunity to say, "I'm very sorry," and let's move on. I don't think that actually we're talking about institutional racism here. I mean, if you look at what happened on the news, Peng Shuai, she accused somebody of sexual harassment and she's gone missing for 3 weeks. Like, we have Azim in Parliament talking about this. So, I think we're trying really hard to address racism where it exists because it's wrong.
Yeah, well, let me know your thoughts on that. mark@gbnews.uk. In just a couple of minutes' time, I'll be meeting Martin Roberts. And at 11, we'll be hearing about a court verdict that's got left-wing America in an absolute tizzy. Kinsey Schofield, the queen of US showbiz and royal reporting, is live. In FAQs later in the show, what is cryptocurrency? We'll speak to a cryptocurrency billionaire. Lucky him. See you in 2.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking like a much colder day than we have seen for quite some time. Let's take a look at the details. A sunny start for many across southwest England, but also a cold one. A few showers are possible, being driven in on a brisk northerly breeze. Temperatures around 6 Celsius. Any morning frost will quickly clear from southeast England. A sunny but cold start to Sunday morning, with the winds a little lighter here. Heavy showers will affect northern and western parts of Wales, some heavy with the risk of hail, driest and sunniest in the south and east. The Midlands will be largely dry but cold first thing tomorrow morning. Northwest England will also be largely dry and sunny, perhaps the odd shower towards the west coast. Morning highs of 7 Celsius. Cloudier skies are expected across northeast England, with showers running along eastern coasts. Some of the showers will be heavy at times, with the risk of hail. A cold and brisk northerly wind. Heavy showers across northern Scotland will continue through the morning, falling as snow over the mountain tops. Clear and frosty to begin across southern Scotland, but with lighter winds here. Northern Ireland will see plenty of sunny spells, but it will be a chilly start to the day, with the risk of a few showers too, a brisk northerly wind. Towards lunchtime, scattered showers will feed further south across the far east and west of the UK, with sunshine in between. And that's how the weather is shaping up tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
We've got some cracking talking points coming up with my amazing panel. Do pop star reunions actually work? Would you eat a boiled lobster, one that was boiled alive? Should we think again about cruelty in the kitchen? And also 6 points on your licence for so much as touching your mobile phone, even to change the track on Elton John's greatest hits. Is that a bit strong? We'll discuss that with my panel in the next 2 hours, plus tomorrow's papers today, the headlines. And in 2 minutes' time, I'll be speaking to Homes Under the Hammer presenter Martin Roberts. So get your questions in right now. Plus, what is cryptocurrency? Is it the future of currency? I'll be diving into this topic in FAQs later. So lots to come, but first, the headlines with Karen.
Thank you, Mark. These are your latest headlines. 30 demonstrators have been arrested after they blocked Lambeth Bridge in a show of solidarity for 9 jailed Insulate Britain protesters. The bridge has reopened to traffic and a demonstration at Vauxhall Cross has also been cleared. Activists had described the so-called Highway 9 as political prisoners. Insulate Britain spokesperson Craig Scudder told GB News many environmental groups are now backing their campaign.
What we're experiencing today is not an Insulate Britain thing. This is, I think, going to be a show of ordinary people from a variety of different environmental groups and backgrounds just coming to push back and rebel.
Video has been released purportedly showing missing Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai having dinner with friends. The video, which can't be independently verified, was posted by a state media journalist on Twitter. It doesn't give details on when the footage was taken. The Wimbledon doubles champion disappeared nearly 3 weeks ago after accusing a former top government official of sexual assault on social media. The Women's Tennis Association welcomed the video's release but said it remains unclear if Peng Shuai is free and able to make decisions and take actions on her own. Thousands of people have been demonstrating against COVID-19 policies in the Austrian capital of Vienna. That's as the country prepares to enter a national lockdown for at least 10 days from Monday. The government says the measures are needed to contain a 4th wave of cases. Campaigners have held a protest at the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, demanding post-Brexit arrangements be protected. The crowd at Carrickcarnan have warned the UK government against triggering Article 16, which would suspend post-Brexit elements currently in place. Unionists have opposed the Northern Ireland Protocol, objecting to the idea of a trade barrier with Great Britain. Negotiations between the UK and the EU are ongoing. Protesters in Italy claim an increase in motorboats is crowding the Venice Canal and polluting the city. Hundreds of people arrived on a flotilla of gondolas to demonstrate against the larger vessels, which they say are damaging the foundations of the city and contributing to flooding. Cruise liners were banned from the Venice Canal earlier this year. Octopuses, crabs and lobsters have feelings too, that's according to a new study. The research by the London School of Economics and Political Science says there's strong scientific evidence which proves the animals experience pain, distress or harm. It's prompted the government to add the sea creatures to an animal welfare protection list by recognising them as sentient beings. You are right up to date. Now, back to Mark Dolan tonight.
A really busy 2 hours coming up. Lots of emails coming in on a variety of issues. Carol has said, Mark, another great programme, so many subjects already raised. This is just to vote no to transgender females participating in female sport for all of the reasons that your guest, Kelly J, just gave. David says, hi, Mark. I listened with great interest to your item with Peter Tatchell. Now, I know that there are 4 genders. They are male, female, and those people who, by cruel twist of fate and nature, are born in the wrong body, but just wish to have a choice to be free. And then there is the 4th gender, of which Peter Tatchell is obviously one, and that is moron. Never have I heard such absurd poppycock in all my life. These people must be silenced for the good of humanity, says Dave. Well, strong words there, Dave. Obviously, you know, Dave, that I want to hear all opinions on this show, but thank you very much for yours. Do email in again. Brian says, Mark, can anyone name any top-level trans men in sport? Just asking. Thank you for that, Brian. Julia, on the subject of Austria and COVID restrictions and the mandate on the vaccine coming in February next year. That's the topic of my big opinion, which is now available to watch on our Twitter feed at GBNews. Julia says, oh, for heaven's sakes, Mark, can GB News just stop banging on about Austria? It is not our country, says Julia. Let's hope the UK is not in shutdown over Christmas before smugly judging other countries. And Anne says, dear Mark, the only reason we have relative freedom in England is because the majority of us have had the COVID-19 vaccine. Your panel are so irresponsible, peddling their myths about the jab. If we have any form of lockdown or COVID passports, it's because of the unvaccinated, says Annie. On South Norfolk in Diss has the highest number of COVID infection cases. It also has the lowest number of people who have been vaccinated. Proof that it's taking the vaccine that's the only route to freedom. No issue with those who cannot have the vaccine, and these are the selfish people who are putting those vulnerable at risk of ill health, long COVID or even death. Annie, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. We'll get to more of your opinions later in the programme, but it's time now for Mark Meets, in which I interview the biggest names in the world of showbiz, politics, sport and beyond. Tonight, Homes Under the Hammer presenter Martin Roberts, born in Warrington in Cheshire. Martin Roberts began his broadcasting career in the late 80s at BBC Radio Manchester. But his passion for broadcasting is matched only by his enthusiasm for property. He is an international property expert and has worked as a very successful property developer since the early 90s. Martin has presented many hit TV shows based around money and property, including Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is, How to Survive the Property Crisis, and of course the enduringly popular BBC One hit Homes Under the Hammer, which has been going since 2003 and it's still going strong. Martin's also had a stint on Celebrity MasterChef, Ready Steady Cook, and he survived a couple of weeks in the jungle. In fact, quite a bit of time. He did very well and came across fantastically. I'm delighted to say that presenter and property expert Martin Roberts joins me now. Hi, Martin.
Good evening, Mark. How are you?
I'm so well. Brilliant to have you on the programme. So what are you foremost? Are you a property developer or a broadcaster?
Oh, blimey. Well, you know, it all started by doing it, and it actually paid for my passion to be a broadcaster. So I actually did up my first house. At the same time, as you say, I was starting out in local radio, Radio Manchester, earning like 25 quid a week. And literally, but at the same time, I was doing up this house. And after 2 years, I'd earned a couple of thousand quid from doing the media stuff. And I doubled the value of my house. So it sort of made me realise that property can give you the income you need to follow your dreams. And that could be making loads of money and giving it away to charity. It could be, working in journalism. It could be just following your dream, working in, whatever it is you want to be. So, it's an opportunity. But I'd say I'm primarily a broadcaster. And at the weekends, I get my hands very dirty.
Well, that is amazing. I mean, I guess when it comes to property, you're like a gambler that got lucky with an early win, and you got the bug, basically.
Yes, I did. I grew up in a house where, it was never completed. My dad was always doing DIY. And these are wonderful old clips you're showing here from God. I look back at this and think, oh my golly gosh, that was, Homes and Hammers I've lived my life through Homes and Hammers. I've had 2 kids. I've had this, that, and everything else going on, and Homes and Hammer has endured throughout it. But yeah, so I just grew up in a house where DIY was the thing to do, and so the passion came from that. And I just did what comes naturally. And it was really interesting because I sort of travelled down a route of being a travel journalist, and so I presented a show called "Wish You Were Here" with Judith Chalmers for 8 years, and travelled the world and had a right old time. And then tell me about "Wish You Were Here," because I mean, do you genuinely go on holiday? Do you genuinely sleep in the hotel and have the all-inclusive buffet? Absolutely, you have to have the all-inclusive buffet. I'm an all-inclusive buffet fan, I have to say. That world, and I was really lucky to do it, Mark, at a time I think when travel was it was an unusual time. It was still when you had, those press trips. You got really treated really rather well, and I was this young lad carrying a tape recorder, but I happened to be working for Radio 4 at the time. That's where it all started. I did a show on Radio 4 called Breakaway. And so I travelled the world with my little tape recorder. But because it was Radio 4, it had a very, very high demographic. So the people that took you to the most amazing places. And I'll do one very quick story. I once stayed in a hotel in New York. And they upgraded me because I chatted up the PR person. They upgraded me to the suite, the penthouse suite in this hotel. And I said to the person who showed me around, she said, the last person to stay in this room was Whitney Houston. And I said, well, so how much does this room cost a night? It was $10,000 a night, okay? Well, when I came to check out, they'd comped the room for 3 nights. So that was $30,000 worth of room, which I'd enjoyed. And I lost it in the foyer because I'd actually had a Coke from the mini bar. So I had a $1.25 bill to pay. And I understood for this £30,000 worth of room plus room. I recognise how lucky I was. But so that was travelling the world. But again, that paid nothing. But it was an amazing life. But at the same time, I was doing this whole thing about investing in property, and it's sort of endured, and it still carries on to allow me to do my passions, which is I've got a children's charity. I love doing that, and I love all the other things that I do, and broadcasting. As you know, until you reach the dizzy heights, it doesn't necessarily pay as much as people think. But the property investment, if you get it right, can actually give you an opportunity to live your dreams.
Have you had ups and downs in property investment, or has it been plain sailing throughout?
So, I started out investing in property probably around about 1986. And when I got my first house, I took out a fixed rate mortgage at 16%. So that, God forbid we ever return to those kind of levels. So when people, talk about how hard it is right now, it is hard to get on the property ladder. But once you can, if you can find ways of doing it, then at least the interest you have to pay on mortgage is a lot less than 15%. It's lowest than it's ever been. But then I got sucked into this world of overseas property. If you remember in the early 2000s, it was all about buying in Spain and Bulgaria and Portugal and all these places. It all seemed terribly glamorous.
It was cheap, wasn't it?
It was cheap and it had that romance to it. And I'll buy somewhere and I'll be able to rent it out some of the time and I'll be able to live in it the rest of the time and blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, 2007 and 2008 happened and it was carnage. It was carnage in the UK. But trust me, compared to the rest of the world, it was peachy because Spain just went completely foot. All those places, Bulgaria, all those obscure places. It got to a ridiculous point when people were like just trying to outdo themselves. With you go to these big international property shows and everyone going, "Oh, latest place, Mongolia. Have you heard about? Yes, you can buy a yurt in Mongolia. Property prices go." Then it all went like that, and it all just disappeared, and I lost shed loads. And I should have stuck with the UK, and it would have been much more sensible. But you live and learn, and if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
Did you come to the brink financially?
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah. So I know what it's like to be really, really not being able to sleep at night. Really wondering how the heck you are going to get through this without going completely foot. So it didn't go completely foot, but it came extraordinarily close. So, it does enable you to empathise. And in those circumstances, there's things that people need to do. God forbid we ever get into that situation. I know people are in those situations, on a daily basis. And the main thing is, don't hide your head under the duvet. You've got to get out. There are people out there who can help you. And a lot of people, when you talk to them, will be supportive, and the worst thing you can do is just go silent. And so I lived through that just about. And
how did you, Martin, how did you get out of it?
So just by talking to people, I had a business, which unfortunately was which I was responsible for the debts for. So it was a case of just talking to people and saying, look, we're all in this mess. If you just support me and work through this with me, we can work through this together. And then being understanding, and just doing what you could to get through that period. If anyone who was in that time, remembers, it was Lehman Brothers going foot. It was the world just not knowing what the heck was happening. So
yeah,
it was,
and of course, Ireland took a kicking as well. Ireland was this tiger economy, and there were taxi drivers talking about their portfolio of properties just before the crash.
You can understand that people were sucked into it. I was sucked into it. It was. It seemed like a sensible thing. It made sense. Nobody could have saw what was coming. Somebody did. The people who who could see it coming, did very well. But the rest of us were sort of like, oh my word. But I took solace in the fact that, it caught the big banks out. People who were paid millions to watch the markets. It caught them out. It caught Barclays out. It caught Lehman Brothers out. It caught, Morgan Stanley out. It caught all these places out. And it's, so little old me, and many others like me, I guess it's not so surprising. But you have to pick yourself up from that, and stick to your knitting and dig your feet in and get on with it, really. But through it all, that was the chaos of property. I was still doing all my TV stuff, and that kept me sane.
It kept you sane and kept a bit of money coming in. It is, a blessing that you survived and you're here to tell the story. And your career has gone from strength to strength. Let's talk about Homes Under the Hammer. When you started it in the early noughties, did you have any idea that you'd be doing it almost 20 years later?
We made 10 programs, Mark. That was it. And we thought this is quite good. But the first series was for 10, and they loved those, so they asked for another 20. And then we were okay, great, this is good news. And then somebody said, well, if you get to a series of 50 shows in total, that's amazing. So then they commissioned another 80 shows, and then the next commission was for 160. And I mean, this is extraordinary. I mean, I'm really proud of it, and here we are, 18 years on, and people, it's inspired people. It's people seem to love it. I'm very touched. So people often discover it at difficult times, because it is daytime, and although a lot of us have changed our work habits. Traditionally, it's sometimes people come to it in difficult times of their life. They might be made redundant. They might be struggling with bringing up a baby for the first time. Going through maternity. They might be ill, whatever it might be, and a lot of people say to me, it's helped me through some quite difficult times, and those kind of stories, I'm really proud of. I'm really proud.
And is the show real? I mean, how much of that is a soap opera, what we see on the screen with Homes Under the Hammer?
I think one of the reasons it's successful is it is completely real. I mean, when I go into a house, you're getting it firsthand. I mean, I don't generally walk around the houses really before I do my piece to camera. So you're seeing it. That's why sometimes it's just a sort of just a gurgitation of my brain thought, because it's actually what I'm seeing. Because I do it, I can see things and sort of say, blah blah blah. So I just try and let people into what I'm thinking. So it is completely genuine. What you generally see for me is one take. I mean, it's the first take, warts and all. The interviews are as they happen, and what people do, is real. I mean, that's one of the things that's great about it. We don't criticize. We don't ever make people look foolish. I mean, people want to, people, some of their ambitions and some of their budgets do raise an eyebrow. But have
you? I mean, not naming names, but have you had any nightmare contestants over the years?
Nightmare? No, not nightmare. I think overly ambitious, and I think most people stare at it, especially if you're in the trade. You go, you haven't got a cat in heck's chance of making that work. There was one chap we spoke to who had a house in Swindon, and it was his first project. Love him. But I said, so what are you going to do? So I'm going to build an extension. I've got to do damp proofing, and there's a new roof. It's like, wow, big project. First time, yeah. I'm going to replace the kitchen, the bathroom, and it needs a rewire. And I said, oh, well, what's your budget? He said £2,000. And it was, yeah, but you just, sometimes, Mark, you sort of, you as a viewer and we go, there's no way you're going to do that. Really, and that's a really daft idea. And then you go back 6 months or 9 months later and you go, you know what? Good on you. You've done it good. And, the nicest stories, are the people who maybe take what they've done. And we had one couple who we talked to, and they had literally done up a house and they were giving away all the profits from that house, doing it up to charity. And it was going to a homeless, an orphanage in Africa. And I said to them, wow. And I said, we just thought about it. We thought, well, it's going to take a lot of tin rattling outside the local supermarket to get the amount of money we've raised. So this is our way of doing it. And I just thought, sometimes, property developers get a bad rap. And, and like in every industry, there's bad guys out there. But I do property training courses. And one of the things we just try to do is to get people to do it ethically, get people to do it professionally. And the private landlords, they do fulfill a role that nobody else is going to fulfill. So, I'm proud when people do it well. And it's amazing when their ambitious projects turn right. And what it isn't, what I think is one of the reasons it's not grand designs. I love grand designs and I love what Kevin does on that and the aspiration which people have. But that is probably not within most people's capabilities. And when you look at Homes Under the Hammer and you see a 2-up, 2-down terrace, which costs somebody 70 grand, and they've spent hard-earned effort, another 10 grand doing it up and all their effort and energies. And I think for a lot of people looking at that is achievable. And that is probably one of the reasons why it's endured, is that hopefully there's some take-home value as well.
I think there is. It's a winning formula. And as you say, it really feels authentic because it is real. Another thing that was real is your participation in the Real Full Monty TV show, all for charity. Here's a clip after you wrapped up.
That's it! We did it! We just done the Real Full Monty.
amazing audience. Quite extraordinary experience, but we pulled it off. And wow. I mean, I don't know what to say. It was amazing, and Dave would be proud. And if it gets more people to go and visit their doctor sooner rather than later, then that's job done. Make sure you watch it when it comes out in December, and you can see the real full Monty.
Now, you did that charity performance partly in tribute to your dear pal, Dave, who you sadly lost a few years ago. And, the full Monty, did you reveal?
Yes, I know. Now, there's an embargo. We're talking about this too much until beginning of December, but we did do it on Tuesday. So I'm still in a slight state of shock, as you've seen from that clip. But yeah, my best mate, Dave, died, same age as me, died of bowel cancer at the age of 54, which, it absolutely heartbreaking and cancer affects so many people. Yeah. And yet his widow is convinced if he'd gone to the doctors sooner, there's a strong possibility that he'd still be here. And I think one of the things which the Full Monty is all about, it's all about those sort of private cancers of private places, if you like. So for men, it's testicular cancer, it's prostate cancer, it's bowel cancer. For women, it's sort of breast cancer and cervical cancer. And as blokes, I think we're much worse than women, actually. We just put things off. Like, Dave had blood in his poo and he thought, well, whatever. And he didn't go to the doctor. And, blokes tend to be a little bit like that. And I think the main raison d'etre for the show isn't about us getting our kit off. That's almost just like the sizzle. But the main thing is to get people to watch a show, which is hugely interesting. We've all got stories about cancer and how cancer's touched us. But the main thing is to get people to go at the first signs of any problems to the doctor. Especially if it's those embarrassing places where you think, I don't want some stranger poking about down there. It's better than the option. It is the main message of the show. Get there, get it checked out sooner rather than later. And if one person's saved from the sort of pain that my mate and his family went through, then that's job done. I say, Mark, I love Homes Under the Hammer. I'm a Celeb was phenomenal. All the other things I've done, MasterChef. This probably is the most important show I've ever done because, it will save lives, and that puts it on a different stratosphere, doesn't it?
Well, I can't wait for it. I can't wait for it. Well, yeah. Do we have a date yet for when it's out?
No, that's embargoed. I don't know when it is. It's sometime in December, mid-December.
Well, listen, we'll tweet that out because I've got to see your hard hat, assuming it was the Full Monty that you did. So look, good on you for that. Your charitable work is a big part of what you do. The Martin Roberts Foundation, tackling childhood sadness through the medium of a storybook. You are, of course, a very successful children's author as well. You're the author of the Vils children's book series. One of the books in the series, Sadsville, was written in partnership with the NSPCC. So you've got a big talent and a big conscience as well. Your bank account has recovered to a degree, thank God, after the credit crunch. How about this question from Adrian on email, Martin, with the clock against us, but let's get to an answer if you can. Adrian says, what was the worst kept house you ever visited in Homes Under the Hammer?
So it's usually ones where they've had some kind of a pet, normally a dog, and they've kept it inside. It's not the look of a place, it's the smell. When you walk through the door, it just hits you. But we also have a Homes Under the Hammer rule, and that is never open the fridge.
A very, very wise move. Certainly don't do that when you're round at my house, let me tell you. And finally, Martin, what are your thoughts about the housing market as we emerge, hopefully, from the pandemic and the recession? It's been a traumatic time, but assuming that we're in a good place with the pandemic, are you optimistic for the years to come, both in the rental market and also for house buying and selling?
Yes, I mean, I think if the pandemic's proven anything, it's that the housing market is extraordinarily resilient. I mean, I was always relatively positive but even I've been shocked by quite how resilient it was. And generally, housing markets don't like uncertainty. There couldn't have been any more uncertainty than when we ended the pandemic about what was going to happen to the world, what was going to happen to us personally, da-di-da-di-da. And not surprisingly, people were anticipating 20, 30, 40% drops in house prices. Because, as I said, housing markets generally don't like trouble, which is why Rishi introduced the whole stamp duty thing that he did and all that kind of stuff. And here we are 2 years on, and we've seen 20, 30, 40% increases, not drops in house prices. So to me, that should give some assurance that it does still remain, I think, a very safe place to put your money. And I know it's hard to get on the ladder, and that's why one of the reasons why I do my property training courses, to give people alternative ways of investing and getting onto that, into that world of property, because I believe it can do what it did for me, which is enable you to live your dreams. And if that's giving away the money to charity or doing charitable work or just making sure that your kids and your family are good, then I think property is probably one of the safest investments that you can still do. And I don't think that's changed.
Martin, it's been such a joy to have you on the show. Big up to you for all of your charity work. The Martin Roberts Foundation.org.uk. Take a look at that one, the amazing work that Martin and his team do. And the real Full Monty is coming to a TV screen near you in December. Martin, catch you soon. Lovely to have you on the programme. Fantastic stuff. So coming up in my news agenda with the panel, do you think customer service has got worse during the pandemic? Well, John Humphreys, the broadcaster, thinks so. My panel and I will be discussing this and much more in the news agenda. But next, what is cryptocurrency? My guest, the Mighty Ducks star and cryptocurrency billionaire Brock Pierce, will be explaining all in FAQs. See you shortly.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Back to the trans issue. Dave says, hi Mark, the best women's football team in the world, USA, were beaten 5-2 by an under-15 boys team from Dallas in 2017. There was also a game with Sweden and Swedish women against 10 teenage boys. They were also easily beaten. I think most non-league teams in the UK could beat any women's football team. Thank you, Dave, for your thoughts. It's time now for FAQs, frequently asked questions, in which we take a deep dive into a topic in or around the news. Tonight, we hear so much about alternative currencies. But what are things like Bitcoin? What is cryptocurrency? Do you need it? Should you buy it? And is the future of your money digital? Who better to speak to than cryptocurrency billionaire, futurist and former actor from the hit movie franchise The Mighty Ducks, Brock Pierce. Hi, Brock.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to meet you. You're a Hollywood royalty and you're cryptocurrency royalty as well.
Well, I've lived a blessed life and very fortunate and grateful for it.
So could you tell me, for the uninitiated like myself, what is cryptocurrency?
Well, let's start with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is the first of the cryptocurrencies. It is an alternative asset class, probably best thought of as digital gold. But what makes it different than all of the other things we know? There is no company that owns or controls and runs Bitcoin. It is an open source software system that runs through nodes of computers all over the world, making it a distributed or decentralized system. And so it is incredibly secure, incredibly resilient, and there is a fixed or limited supply. There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. And so as a result of all this financial uncertainty, all of this money that's being printed, people are looking for alternative stores of value, whether that be homes, real estate, whether that be commodities like gold, and Bitcoin clearly has been the biggest winner of them all. And so this is a place where people are storing value in times of financial uncertainty. And clearly technology is having a very big impact on the world. We're living through this fourth industrial or digital transformation. And the future is clearly digital. And the question is Bitcoin the future or something like it? And so far, Bitcoin has carved out its role in that market as digital gold. But there are thousands of others that are building on the idea of Bitcoin, trying to bring additional feature sets to this market of people where digital is part of their DNA.
And is buying Bitcoin a bit like buying shares? The value can go up and down. Is it speculation? Is it an investment?
Absolutely, and it's highly volatile, more than most of your typical stocks. But that's also because of where it is in its development. But it is not uncommon to see the price of Bitcoin move 100% up or 50% down. We see this every couple of years. And so definitely don't invest anything more than you can afford to lose. I've never encouraged anyone to invest in these things other than to say, buy $100 worth of Bitcoin, not as a financial investment, but an investment in yourself, in your own knowing, so that you can make informed decisions for yourself.
What do governments think of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin?
Well, it depends on what country you're in. The Chinese government earlier this year banned Bitcoin in China, mostly because of the freedom or liberty-based characteristics that are there. And in other parts of the world, you've got tremendous support. Take, for example, the country of El Salvador earlier this year passed a law to make Bitcoin legal tender or legal currency. On September 9th, that law took effect. And within 30 days of that happening, over 50% of the population of the country had downloaded a Bitcoin wallet. And what's interesting in the developing world, because there's 4 to 4.5 billion people on the planet that are on or underbanked, only 30% of the population had any type of financial services. It was a cash-based economy. And so with only 30% having access within 1 month, a majority of the population within 3 months, over 70% of the population of El Salvador. And so this idea of how do we bank the unbanked, how do we create a world of financial inclusion, it is absolutely working. And then here in the United States, take the mayor of Miami. Mayor Suarez recently announced that he was going to take his next paycheck in Bitcoin. And then the new mayor of New York City, Mayor-elect Eric Adams, followed up and said he's taking his next 3 paychecks in Bitcoin, and mayors across the country. And so we started out with kind of the real digital community that was a fan of this, then the academic community, then the venture capital community, then the big tech community, now the financial services community. And the last part of the call it adoption is the governments of the world embracing it. and that is clearly happening. I've been meeting with presidents in Ecuador, Panama, Guatemala, Honduras. I've got about another 30 heads of state that are eager to get into this conversation to understand how technology or innovation, specifically things like cryptocurrency, can benefit their nation and, most importantly, their people.
Do you think that cryptocurrency will ultimately replace individual national currencies like the dollar and the British pound?
If that were to happen, it would be, a very long time from now. What this really is a parallel financial system. You've got call it the old financial system and the new financial system. But I clearly think that this is the future, and I do encourage everyone to get involved, but not as a financial investment. Go open up an account, buy your first $20, $50, $100, nothing of any significance, as the beginning of your education. That is how you take your first step into the future. And the future is going to happen, no matter what we do. And so the future can happen to you or it can happen with you. And I encourage everyone to get involved because the future can be bright. It is what we make it.
Well, yeah, for sure. You are a cryptocurrency billionaire now. What does that mean? Can you cash that in?
Oh, yes. These markets are incredibly liquid. Right now, we're between a $2 and $3 trillion market. This has been the largest wealth creation event in the history of the world. It's the greatest wealth transfer event of anything we've ever seen, and it's happening rapidly. And what's interesting is typically venture capitalists or institutions that finance innovation or disruption would be the beneficiaries of this. The venture capital community, which is about $250 billion, completely missed it. So instead of the pensions, the endowments, the financial institutions, or the world's elite having been the biggest beneficiaries, it was we the people. That is a lot of money to put in the hands of the people all over the world.
I wonder whether Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies will be a more stable option going forward, particularly when you look at the national debt that's exploding in countries like the UK and America. Do you predict that, notwithstanding the growth and success of cryptocurrencies, that there is every possibility of a global financial crash?
I'm deeply concerned about it. We're seeing it in inflation. If you had gone out here in the northern parts of the United States where it's getting cold, we're entering winter, you go out, you buy your bags of salt to pour on your driveway. What used to cost $6 a bag a few weeks ago was up to $16 a bag. And last I heard, it's $22. We're seeing it in our gas prices. We're seeing it all over the place, in part because of supply chain sort of disruptions. But we are seeing, as a result of printing tens of trillions of dollars, an impact where the purchasing power of our money is in decline. And that is one of the reasons why Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies have become such a popular alternative as we are concerned. I certainly don't wish or hope for that sort of crisis because that's not good for our lives, but it is a very real possibility. And I always say, hope for the best, plan for the worst. And taking your first step to understand what this is, what it's all about, and how it might benefit your life is certainly something I would recommend.
Briefly, Brock, on whether things benefit or otherwise in terms of your life, tell me about your career as a child movie actor. You were in the hit movie franchise The Mighty Ducks. How did that change your life, and why aren't you still an actor?
Well, I started acting at the age of 3. So I clearly didn't choose to be an actor. Actually, my first memory in life takes place on a set. And so I was busy making commercials and modeling as a child. And as a kid from Minnesota, we all generally play hockey. When Walt Disney came to town to make The Mighty Ducks, I fortunately booked a role that led to me moving to Los Angeles, making movie after movie after movie, ultimately starring in a film called First Kid, where I played the son of the President of the United States of America with Sinbad and Bill Clinton and Sonny Bono. But by the time I was 15 or 16, I asked myself, is this my calling? Is this what I really want to do in life? And having been a byproduct of the first generation of kids with computers and internet connections, I said this whole technology thing is going to change the world, and I want to be a part of that. And so at 16 years old, at the height of my acting career, I quit to become an entrepreneur, and I've built dozens of businesses since then, and glad to be on the forefront of innovation. Trying to see where the world is going and to be a participant in facilitating positive change for all of our lives. And last year, I ran for president of the United States of America as an independent candidate. And so I've gotten very involved in our politics and our systems of governance because I'm deeply concerned about our future. And I want to know that there are people in government that not only understand what is happening in the present, but understand where we're going in terms of the future so that we can navigate this challenging but opportunistic road ahead of us.
Do you rate sleepy Joe Biden?
Well, the president of the United States is more than a person, it's an office. And I support the president, whomever it is, because I think it's important to our future, as well as in places like the UK. I really hope that our leadership makes the best decisions they possibly can during their tenure. And at the end of that, we get another round of elections where we really get to express ourselves. And I just hope we get back to good sportsmanship. I'm concerned about this political division we see in the world. We used to be able to sit down at a table, have conversations with people that we disagree with. And at the end of it, we can agree to disagree, but we understand the perspective, and we can do that with dignity and respect. And I hope we get back to that place.
Brock Pierce, are you going to make a run in 2024? I'll be your campaign manager. Brock rocks.
Yeah, Brock the vote. Well, I'm clearly continuing to participate in our political process here. And I'd say there's a very good chance that I will be running for another office again, or I wouldn't have subjected myself to the scrutiny that one has to undergo. There's a reason why very few people are willing to run for these high offices. The risk associated with jumping into that ring is very real. It can cost you your life, your reputation, your liberty, your wealth. But I care so deeply about our collective well-being that it's a moral obligation to me. It's not something that I wanted or desired, but because I'm willing and able, I decided to do all that I can.
Brock, we've only got a couple of seconds, but where's the best place for people to go to find out more about cryptocurrency? What would be the best first port of call?
Well, generally go to places like YouTube, or if you're a Twitter user, jump onto that. And if you start a video and it doesn't make sense to you, skip to the next one. It's nice and easy. If you're looking to make your first purchases, one of the easiest websites for doing that is Coinbase.com, and start with Bitcoin, and then you can go take a look at other things like Ethereum or EOS, and it's a brave new world that's emerging, and I definitely encourage everyone to take the time to research. If someone told you that the internet's going to be a big deal, email back in the late 90s, it was good advice to go actually learn a little bit more.
Brock, it's been a joy to have you on the programme. Let's speak again soon. Brock Pierce there, who is a futurist and a cryptocurrency billionaire and a former child star, part of the Mighty Ducks movie franchise. My thanks to Brock Pierce. So much more to come, let me tell you. In Uncensored at 11, we'll speak to top royal and showbiz commentator Kinsey Schofield. We'll be discussing Meghan and her bizarre appearance on Ellen. But more importantly, we'll take a look at the recent verdict handed down to Kyle Rittenhouse. It's a controversial story, and it's got leftist liberal America in quite the tizzy. In the news agenda next, should real people resume their roles as customer service operators or have automated systems taken over? Have you found that customer service has headed downhill in the course of the pandemic? We'll discuss that in the news agenda. See you shortly.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
It's time now to look at which headlines are breaking and what will be in tomorrow's news tonight in our news agenda with my brilliant panel. Presenter and social commentator Ingrid Tarrant, author and journalist at the Mail Online and elsewhere, Emily Hill, and Chief Executive of the Independent Business Network, Brendan Chilton. As if customer service wasn't already an issue, COVID restrictions have been used as an excuse for inferior customer service during the pandemic. There was a time when our queries were listened to by another human over the phone. Well, that appears to be a thing of the past. Quite frankly, we've had enough, haven't we, of hearing recorded messages telling us our calls are important to them as we wait minutes, if not hours, to have our queries met. So is poor customer service a legacy of the pandemic? That's certainly the view of John Humphreys, writing in the Mail newspaper. But I've noticed it, Ingrid. Customer service
have I.
gone through the floor.
Absolutely. Can I name and shame?
Yes, you must.
Good. British Gas home care agreement. I've got that, and I've got it on various properties. I've got a few that I rent out here and there, which is my whatever. I don't think they've been out at all for 2 years. They make an appointment, then they say they can't come because it's priority with other people because of the pandemic and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They keep using COVID, pandemic, everything. People don't turn up. I wait in. They don't tell me they're not coming. So I wait in 6 till 6 because they won't give us sort of like a morning or afternoon more often than not. I have had it. I've had every excuse. I've had it up to here. And then, but what I've worked out, and actually we all knew this before, if you're hanging on because they don't answer, and their website was down as well quite a lot of the time, it's almost like they don't want you to book the engineer online. I cannot tell you, it has been an absolute nightmare. So I've had other people come in. I pay for the electricians, the plumbing and the this, that and the other and all the rest of it, which I'm not getting. So I'm paying twice. I'm so angry. And they are using this as an excuse. But with other things where I haven't had too many problems, but yes, I've had problems nonetheless. If you say that you're going to cancel your policy, then that's it. If you press numbers sort of like 3, thinking of leaving, yes, I'll press that one. Hello, how can we help? Then you speak to somebody. It's,
No, well, look, you know, and I'm obviously, you know, British Gas are not here to defend themselves. I'm sure they would argue
they would have to defend themselves vigorously because there's nothing. There is nothing
to you. They would clearly say,
and a lot of other people, I bet.
Right. Well, you know, they obviously would say that they're doing everything they can to fulfil their customers' needs. Ingrid doesn't agree.
No.
However, I wonder whether there are wider symptomatic issues. And I think, Emily, that for the first few weeks and months of the pandemic, perhaps you can cut these organisations some slack. But I've noticed, for example, vehicle breakdown recovery services. You know, it used to be a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours to get a flat tyre fixed. I've waited 8, 9 hours. On one occasion, essentially they gave up and I had to do it the next day.
Well, that's shocking. I can't say I've had this problem at all, actually. I mean, maybe it's because my social life is, they say, tragic and sad. I actually enjoy go out
and everything functions.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm trapped in my home and, you know, it gives me someone to talk to, doesn't it? I also quite like the idea that it is all automated, because I think what a horrible job it is to have to sit in a call centre all day taking cranky phone calls about things that aren't your fault. And I do swear a lot. And so I quite enjoy being, you know, kept on hold by a robot or whatever, so I can sort of curse and swear. And, I'm not upsetting anybody or ruining their day.
A fly on the wall.
No, it's really terrible because, like, you know, in certain circumstances I've got to try red, and I was like, no, sorry, it's not your fault, is it? Like, it's not your personal fault. But yeah, I don't know. I think it is a problem because I think the pandemic is ramping up all our worries and tensions and frustrations, and they're just boiling over.
But I think it's also just an excuse for these businesses to be rubbish because of COVID. It's those magic words, because of COVID.
Well, what's interesting is that productivity during the lockdown in certain sectors supposedly increased. Now, but I share our two friends' colleagues. I haven't witnessed that personally when I've had to deal with these organisations. It has become an excuse for inefficiency, particularly in parts of the public sector.
That's it.
And in also some businesses that sort of larger, sort of multinational types. In sort of smaller family-run firms have actually increased their productivity and connectivity with people. So it's quite different depending on the type of business and the type of sector.
What about those call centres where the person that you speak to is clearly at home and a bit depressed?
Well, I've absolute sympathy for them.
I don't blame them.
Yeah, I know.
I don't blame them, but I certainly have felt like it's, you know, service with a snarl sometimes when I call people up and they're clearly working from home. Perhaps they're isolated, bored and lonely.
I think they are, and the big issue we've got at the moment, of course, is getting people back into the workplaces. I mean, coming into London today, you know, parts of the city are still empty, even though it's the weekend and a Saturday night. And we've got to somehow get people back into the offices where it's practical to do so, because for the mental health and well-being, particularly of newcomers and young people starting in a business or in a firm, they don't meet their colleagues, and sitting on Zoom all day is no supplement for being in a place, interacting as we are here tonight, and in the workplace.
We've also had, haven't we, a sort of awful situation in the pandemic of arrows in supermarkets, social distancing, and it means we've got used to queuing for everything. It feels like Soviet Russia half the time, and I wonder whether that's going to be an ongoing legacy of the pandemic. Slow customer service and queuing for everything.
Well, it's a bit like IKEA, isn't it? Following the arrows on the floor.
Is that another company you've got your guns pointed at?
No.
They're okay?
No complaints about them. No, none.
That's a relief.
It is a relief. Yes, I suppose it will be that. But the English are always renowned for queuing, aren't they? Sort of like, you know, standing patiently in line in the bus stop and yet you go onto the...
Yeah, but if it's just the little things, like my local dentist, you can't use the loo anymore. I said, can I use your bathroom? They said, no, it's staff only at the moment.
Oh, no, it's all...
Another COVID thing
honestly,
for everyone's safety. Well, I can promise you it's very unsafe if I don't have a wee in a minute.
Quite, exactly. Well, you should prove it to them that they've made a terrible mistake. But the thing is, that's not across the board, because I can go to the loo at my dentist, honestly. But, you know, the other thing, I just want to say very quickly that a lot of people actually, in the private sector, I think it has been much better, the people working from home, because they are really diligent. I do think when you get in the public sector, they don't care. They're just going to get paid. They'll do sickies and all the rest of it. On one respect, I've seen people, they love working from home. They don't like the commute. They work longer hours. They feel more relaxed when they actually start working and everything. They will go into the office from time to time. So I think it should be personal choice, what works best for that person. But I will say another thing. Somebody told me that they were doing this course, actually to do nails, and there were quite a few other girls there, and they all brought laptops, and she was thinking, oh, this is interesting. Actually, almost like, well, why haven't I got one? What am I missing out and everything?
Yeah.
And every so often, they would just go like this. And what they were doing is that they can monitor how long you're logged on for. And so as long as you do this from time to time, it shows that you're still logged on, but they weren't working at all. So they would wait, and I've looked into this, and if you hang on and on and on and on and on, all these people are just doing like this, like pretending that they're working.
No.
And until somebody sort of thinks, I'm a really decent person, I'll pick up the phone.
We've all been there. Get me your stories of bad customer service. I'll show you shortly.
It's time to remind ourselves, there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking like a much colder day than we have seen for quite some time. Let's take a look at the details. A sunny start for many across southwest England, but also a cold one. A few showers are possible, being driven in on a brisk northerly breeze. Temperatures around 6 Celsius. Any morning frost will quickly clear from southeast England. A sunny but cold start to Sunday morning, with the winds a little lighter here. Heavy showers will affect northern and western parts of Wales, some heavy with the risk of hail, driest and sunniest in the south and east. The Midlands will be largely dry but cold first thing tomorrow morning. Northwest England will also be largely dry and sunny, perhaps the odd shower towards the west coast. Morning highs of 7 Celsius. Cloudier skies are expected across northeast England, with showers running along eastern coasts. Some of the showers will be heavy at times, with the risk of hail. A cold and brisk northerly wind. Heavy showers across northern Scotland will continue through the morning, falling as snow over the mountain tops. Clear and frosty to begin across southern Scotland, but with lighter winds here. Northern Ireland will see plenty of sunny spells, but it will be a chilly start to the day, with the risk of a few showers too, a brisk northerly wind. Towards lunchtime, scattered showers will feed further south across the far east and west of the UK, with sunshine in between. And that's how the weather is shaping up tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
A very busy last hour of the show. We've saved our best till last, folks. We're going to play another Great British Game Show before midnight, and that's a fun game based around a big news story of the day. I want you to play along at home. We're also going to do Uncensored. We're going live to Hollywood, California, for the American reaction to the Queen's health. Meghan Markle back in the news for the wrong reasons, and a court verdict that liberal America, lefties in Washington, including President Joe Biden, are not happy about. Find out why after the latest news headlines with Karen.
Thank you, Mark. Here are your latest headlines. A 35-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder after 2 people were found dead at a house near Preston. Officers discovered the bodies of a man and a woman after forcing entry to the property on Canbridge Street in the village of Higher Walton. The suspect, who police say is from the local area, remains in custody. 30 demonstrators have been arrested after they blocked Lambeth Bridge in a show of solidarity for 9 jailed Insulate Britain protesters. The bridge has reopened to traffic, and a demonstration at Vauxhall Cross has also been cleared. Activists have described the so-called Highway 9 as political prisoners. Insulate Britain spokesperson Craig Scudder told GB News many environmental groups are now backing their campaign.
What we're experiencing today is not an Insulate Britain thing. This is, I think, going to be a show of ordinary people from a variety of different environmental groups and backgrounds just coming to push back and rebel.
Video has been released purportedly showing missing Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai having dinner with friends. The video, which can't be independently verified, was posted by a state media journalist on Twitter. It doesn't give details on when the footage was taken. The Wimbledon doubles champion disappeared nearly 3 weeks ago after accusing a former top government official of sexual assault on social media. The Women's Tennis Association welcomed the video's release but said it remains unclear if Peng Shuai is free and able to make decisions and take actions on her own. Thousands of people have been demonstrating against COVID-19 policies in the Austrian capital of Vienna. That's as the country prepares to enter a national lockdown for at least 10 days from Monday. The government says the measures are needed to contain a fourth wave of cases. Campaigners have held a protest at the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, demanding post-Brexit arrangements be protected. The crowd at Carrickcarnan have warned the UK government against triggering Article 16, which would suspend post-Brexit elements currently in place. Unionists have opposed the Northern Ireland Protocol, objecting to the idea of a trade barrier with Great Britain. Negotiations between the UK and the EU are ongoing. Octopuses, crabs and lobsters have feelings too, that's according to a new study. The research by the London School of Economics and Political Science says there's strong scientific evidence which proves that animals experience pain, distress or harm. It's prompted the government to add the sea creatures to an animal welfare protection list by recognising them as sentient beings. You are right up to date. Now back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Coming up in the news agenda in this final part of the show with my panel, lots of talking points. Is 6 points on your licence too much for using a phone, even if you just change the track on a particular music album that you're listening to at the traffic lights? Seems a little strict to me, but what do you think about that? Do pop reunions work? Is it wrong to eat boiled lobsters, boiled from being alive? Pretty unedifying story, but are there certain things that you wouldn't eat? And don't forget the Great British Game Show at 11:40, a fun game based around a major news story. So lots to get through, but first, this. I've got tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Let's start with The Independent. White House plea in tennis star mystery, a story there being covered by Karen. The US sought assurances about Peng Shuai as Chinese state media released pictures of her yesterday. Fears that terrorists are slipping through the net. Perfect storm for extremism as referrals fall during lockdown. Now there's a surprise. Next up, let's go to the Mirror, please. Bare-faced cheek of Boris. He's maskless days after hospital apology on crowded northern train hit by HS2 axe. Well, I say God bless him for not wearing a face covering. He sets a great example. But, of course, that's just my view. Many would disagree. The Observer. PM told dump plan for care charges or face Tory rebellion. Senior Conservatives last night urged Boris Johnson to ditch plans that would see many of England's poorest pensioners paying more for their social care or risk being forced by his own MPs into a humiliating U-turn. Telegraph. Migrant crisis puts Tories in peril. Senior figures warn the Prime Minister as poll shows 77% of party's voters that call the approach in terms of illegal migration too soft. Jabs for 5-year-olds premature, warn paediatricians. And child abuse fears halt Facebook privacy plan. Sunday Times. Javid orders racial bias review after COVID deaths. Medical devices made for white people may have driven higher minority fatality rates. A very concerning story, that one. Public sector jobs boom, squeezing labour markets. And Oxford dragged into row over Saudi CBE. And last but not least, the Daily Star Sunday. Britain on the skids. We're in the grit. Frozen roads hell ahead as no drivers for gritters. Plus, salt shortage. Please don't tell me we've run out of salt again. It's time now for this. It's time for Uncensored, in which we speak to top commentators around the world who can speak freely without fear of being interrupted, edited, cancelled or deleted. Tonight we head to the Hollywood Hills, Los Angeles, California, and the queen of showbiz and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kinsey.
So good to see you again, friend. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, great to have you on the show. Let's talk about the Queen, her first anniversary alone following the very sad passing of Prince Philip.
I know, it is devastating, but I do have some good news. We are expecting her tomorrow to get to see those great grandbabies of hers that she's so fond of. August and Lucas are expected to be baptized tomorrow at Windsor Castle. Both of those beautiful babies named after Prince Philip. So what a great way for them to remember him, for them to honor him. And it makes you wonder, do Harry and Meghan ever miss out on these opportunities? Because this is really what family is all about, getting together for these moments that you're going to be talking about years from now. And just, it's such a special opportunity to remember Prince Philip, who you know she is aching for today.
Definitely. You mentioned Harry and Meghan. Meghan Markle has appeared on television on the Ellen Chat Show. Tell me more.
I don't want to. I'm just kidding. It was so cringe, Mark. I cannot comprehend what I witnessed. I have to tell you, too, I think it was a couple of weeks or a month ago, I told The Express that PR-wise, I thought that Meghan Markle would excel if she would be a little more maternal, okay? I did not mean go on Ellen and suck a baby bottle. That is not what I meant by maternal. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. Andrew Morton said before the Oprah interview that he anticipated that Meghan was going to sit down with Ellen. I feel like perhaps Ellen's scandal pushed that sit down back. I think that what we were supposed to see was Harry on James Corden and Meghan on Ellen. So it was in our faces. Look at how normal and quirky and funny and cute these guys are. But everything got reshuffled because of Oprah and because of Ellen's scandal. And it just comes out of nowhere. It feels so weird. Grace Kelly would never. And I am absolutely confused by what I just witnessed.
Yes, I would call it an example of comedy in the wrong hands. Let's talk about Anthony Fauci, who's America's chief medical advisor. In hot water, it seems.
Well, I wish that he was in hot water, but, you know, he is still worshipped by a certain sector in the country. You're supposed to wear a mask inside until November 22nd in Washington, D.C. And he was seen on Tuesday without a mask at a media event. And it was for a book launch of an ABC News correspondent, an anti-Trump book launch for an ABC News correspondent. So it's interesting that the same man that's telling us that we should be wearing masks everywhere is seen without a mask inside at an event for media. It just always feels like the people that are breaking the rules are the ones that are shoving the rules down our throats. So he is getting a little negative feedback, but he's going to be fine. Some people say that he should have resigned by now, but I think he's pretty comfortable in the situation. He's getting away with it, so.
Well, it seems like it. So in the end, he himself has become a political figure, I guess, loved by the liberal left.
Yes, sir. And he has a documentary on Disney Plus, where he really goes into that and talks about how the rights tend to hate him, and he goes into like how it's hurt him personally. His children talk about it. So he recognizes that he's a polarizing figure. You would think, based on that his actions would be super hyper aware of the fact that people are going to criticize you. You should be different. I would rather be Fauci, the only guy in the building wearing a mask, and that be the story, than Fauci wasn't wearing a mask either. I would rather be that guy. But apparently, he knows he gets away with it. So why follow the rules?
Can we get to another really big story? It's a big story in America, but it's become a global news story. And again, Kinsey, very highly politicized. The acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse for his homicide, his homicide trial for shooting and killing 2 protesters and wounding another. He's walked away a free man. Why is this verdict so controversial?
Well, it's controversial because the media made it the media heightened the intensity. I was having a conversation with one of my friends who covers trials, and he said he believed throughout, until we actually got to the trial itself, you were under the impression that Kyle had shot 2 African-American men, and he shouldn't have shot anyone. At the end of the day, no one should have died, and I'm sorry that there was death. But the way that the media portrayed it, they heightened this racial tension that was already happening at the time, and threw gasoline on an open flame. To the point where I was having conversations with people leading up to the verdict, and whether we thought he was innocent or not, we assumed that he would get a guilty somewhere just because the jury wanted to make sure the city didn't burn down. Whether they believed it or not, we just expected them to throw in a guilty something to keep the peace. So we were actually all shocked by the verdict. Dan Abrams, who is an ABC legal analyst who I respect immensely, explained on ABC that based on what the prosecution alleged that he did, he was innocent to a jury. The jury found him innocent based on what he was accused of doing. He was innocent. So we do have some people that maybe tend to lean left that are saying, if you just look at the legality, this is how it should have ended up. But of course, then we've got all of the left-leaning celebrities that again stir up trouble, going on Twitter and raising hell. And it's just such a polarizing situation right now. We've had protests in Portland, Chicago, New York, tons of vandalism, violence. Somebody in Portland knocked over somebody in a wheelchair. So we anticipated this reaction, but I don't think too many people anticipated the verdict that he got. And I hope that he stays safe, because I would say I'm concerned for his safety after this verdict.
Well, disgracefully, President Joe Biden, Kinsey, has thrown him under the bus with this statement from the White House. While the verdict in Kenosha will leave many Americans feeling angry and concerned, myself included, we must acknowledge that the jury has spoken. How nice of him to acknowledge the verdict of a jury in a court of law. Kinsey, let's bring my panel in on this one. Brendan Chilton, Emily Hill, and I'm delighted to say Ingrid Tarrant. Now, we're going to bring them in very shortly because it has become very political. And Emily, I think you've got quite strong views on this.
Yeah, I mean, because we're coming from the perspective of Britain, where, we don't have guns, we don't have the Second Amendment. So, coming straight to the case, you just think this guy has to be guilty. He was roaming around the streets with a gun, and then he shot people, and then everybody assumes that the people that he shot are black. And, the president refers to him as a white supremacist. And then you just think it's a very odd thing for a white supremacist to do, to actually shoot 3 white people. And then you look at the criminal records of the people that he shot, and the fact that they were chasing after him. There was a shot, as I understand it, he thought that he had been shot at when he turned and used his gun. There's sort of all this footage of him going around offering first aid. The city was burning. It was, you can't really imagine it happening here. When Clapham Junction burnt down, it wasn't like the police just stood there and 17-year-olds had to go and arm themselves and to try and protect businesses. It was just, the whole thing was just crazy. And what's interesting is how it's gone down on Twitter and with the media. And it's the same over here. Like, if people don't read the details of the case, they just think, oh my God, like what has gone on here? But, you know, the first person he killed was actually a paedophile. And he'd actually, you know, been released from a mental facility. It was, you know, just the detail, and as Kinsey's just said, you know, if the jury have found him innocent, and I was shocked by the verdict too. I thought, oh my God, he's going down, even though, you know, and the judge was very critical of the prosecution, who even questioned his right to... They mentioned that he'd remain silent. Like, if you watch a police procedural, that's the first thing. You have a right to remain silent, and you don't talk without a lawyer. And they're bringing this up. It's astonishing what's going on in America. And, yeah, I was riveted.
Kinsey?
I agree with everything you just said, and I think you're beautiful. I would say, yeah, this is the narrative from the get-go was terrifying by the media, and you felt truly that they were going to make a statement with this young man. One of the men that was shot hit him with a skateboard, you know, so it was unfortunate to watch. And then as you saw it all play out, you're exactly right. Unless you do your own homework, and if you just are listening to those 10-second sound bites on the television, you have a completely different understanding of what went down that day.
Brendan, I can't think of a time in recent American history that great country was so divided.
Yes, I agree broadly everything. America, which is it's the land of the brave, home of the free, that shining city on the hill that has led the liberal democratic world really since the end of the Second World War, with such polarised politics. Social media doesn't help. I'm not going to comment on the gun situation because as a Brit, like my fellow panellists, we find that whole thing extraordinary. But we do need American leadership in the world at the moment. We've got an authoritarian China, an aggressive Russia, dangerous states like Iran, huge instability in the world. And we need America to be at the forefront, leading with their sidekick Britain by its side, trying to keep back these forces of authoritarianism and anti-liberal politics. And if America doesn't do it, there's no other power in the world strong enough to do it. So as a cousin across the sea, we would just look on and say, please come together, get back to that nice, moderate, common-sense politics that you have over there and take your place back in the world, because American leadership is needed.
Ingrid, Paul Embury, the GB News presenter, who's back on the Political Correction this Sunday morning. Tomorrow morning, trade unionist and writer as well, has tweeted the following in regard to Joe Biden's comments about the case. How can it be appropriate, says Paul Embury, for a president to politicise the outcome of a criminal trial in which he played no part and was not present to hear all the evidence? This seems to conflict sharply with precedent and national justice. It's dangerous, says Paul Embury.
I totally agree. As soon as Biden opened his mouth, I thought he shouldn't have done that, because that is going to just inflame the situation in any case. It isn't. He has politicised it. I find this whole thing, the whole case, very, very confusing. He's come from a different state, armed with a gun, which is a very powerful, very precise shooting gun, well, kind of machine gun, really. So what was his agenda when he left the house? He hasn't. Why would he be armed? Secondly, in that state, to me, his lawyers were very, very clever, because it's the most lenient state in the whole of America, where self-defence is revered as a very good defence, and that's what they used. So I need to look into this much, much more and really research every single little detail of it, and footage and conversations and everything. But from a, kind of a shallower point of view, he's gone into that state armed, in a state where self-defence is absolutely the right defence to put in, and the likelihood, therefore, of getting off, which he has. And
Kinsey,
crocodile
Kinsey,
tears.
well, I think you're right. I agree with you, Ingrid. Kinsey, how do you see this one playing out?
Well, really quickly, I just wanted to say, and Mark, maybe you can confirm because you have a computer in front of you, but I was under the impression that somebody handed him the gun or he took that from somebody. But I just have to stress, at the time when this happened, I was so scared in Los Angeles, California, because of what was going on in my city, that I packed up and moved back. I moved in with my family for like 3 months because there was looting and destroying going on all around me, and I was just simply scared. So no one should have died, but it felt like there was no one standing up and saying, stop it, to these people that were burning down cities. And, police brutality is unacceptable, absolutely. But our cities were burning down. They were burning to the ground. And I believe the New York Post did a story about how the New York Times held a story on, they were trying to justify that it was okay to burn down some of these businesses because they had insurance. But when the New York Times reporter went out there, she realized that these were small businesses that were being burned down, that weren't in a position to rebuild. And the New York Times wanted to hold on to that story until after the election. So there was just a lot of corruption happening at the time. And I'm not defending him because I would never try to go get in anybody's faces, but I can say that I was paralyzed with fear at the time that it was going on. And if I voiced that opinion on social media, I said one time, I'm scared. They just blown out the store underneath me. And I was told that I was a racist and it was the worst time in America to be a white person. And I stopped tweeting for like 3 months after that because that's not a normal reaction. I was fearful for my life. But it was just a terrifying time, and I was scared with this. I was scared when he was found not guilty because I thought, are we going to have to relive that all over again? And the protests have been minimal compared to what we saw, but you're exactly right. It's the most polarizing time I've seen in my lifetime. And I don't know what's going to fix it other than leadership, other than godly, faithful leadership, somebody that has a good moral compass. I'm fearful for my country. And I do hope that we find somebody that's not trying to pander for votes and somebody that leads with their heart and somebody that can set the right tone so that we aren't so divided in America anymore.
Here's hoping. Kinsey, a tough story. We normally cover lighter issues, but it's all about light and shade on this programme. We look forward to catching up in a week's time. The brilliant Kinsey Schofield, a broadcaster, showbiz and royal journalist. You can find her on the website To Die For Daily, which is a fantastic royal website. My thanks to Kinsey and the panel. Well, coming up, the Great British Game Show. How eco-friendly are you? We're going to play a game of eco or econ. Oh, God. I'll be putting my panel to the test and you at home in a fantastic game. You've got that to look forward to. But after this, we love, don't we, a good pop reunion. But not all of our favourite artists or shows end up making the comeback that they hope for. My panel and I will take a look at some of the best and worst reunions that have graced our screens in the news agenda. So lots to get through. See you shortly.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
On bad service during the pandemic. So many emails on this. Let's have a look. Shirley, SSE Energy owe my daughter £500 in a final credit refund. They've owed it since July, call after call. About an hour on hold each time results in another chat with an advisor who knows nothing about it, but they do confirm it's due. No excuse, just utter incompetence. Still nothing, says Shirley. Mike says, Mark, there's a well-known bank that advertises we are by your side. I called them recently and the recorded message said we are unusually busy and your wait will be 1 hour and 46 minutes. How about this? David says, I've used the government website to order one of these PCR tests. They email your results, sent it off, over a week later called the helpline, went through a number of options, was eventually met with a recorded voice saying we're too busy at the moment. So nearly another week has followed and still no email regarding the result has been sent. Just highlights how badly this entire COVID issue is being handled. Well done, David. Rachel, I would not have the time to list all of the bad customer service companies. Thinking of writing a book on them. Rachel, you easily could. Thank you for that. Amy says, hi, Mark, I'm not a serial complainer, I promise, but since COVID and for a long time after, I've definitely noticed a slide in the quality of customer service. For example, I've had numerous problems with one of my store cards and the company don't even feel the need to reply to my inquiry weeks later. I've never known that before. And Peter Wright says, Mark, when you have people working from home and you want to escalate to a manager, you can't do it. You cannot speak to the senior figure in any company because they are, of course, working from home. And some harsh words for the DVLA from many of you. Well, it's time now to get through some of the big stories in our news agenda, but let me give you some front pages before that. Sunday People, and here's what the People are leading with. I don't want to die, very moving story. Full of life, schoolboys plea to court as docs end vital treatment. William Verdon has a rare kidney disease and he is seeking treatment with which to treat his illness. Mail on Sunday, royals at war with BBC over tittle-tattle documentary. The Queen has united with Prince Charles and William in a threat to boycott the Beeb over a documentary alleging vicious briefing wars between members of the royal family. Why does the BBC have such a problem with this royal family? And how about the Sunday Express? Boris is still a winner, PM backed, but told solve the migrant crisis. Loyal Red Wall Tory MPs are still backing winner Boris Johnson to lead them into the next election, but he's got to raise his game when it comes to those illegal migrant crossings. Amen to that. Still with me, my brilliant panel, presenter and social commentator Ingrid Tarrant, author and journalist Emily Hill, and the chief executive of the Independent Business Network, Brendan Chilton. Now, over the years, we've had our fair share of successful or not so successful reunions. And now the Spice Girls are set to make a comeback in 2023 with their long-awaited world tour, whilst the Harry Potter cast are also going to have a reunion, a Friends-style reunion. There were loads of virtual reunions over lockdown, and most of them, frankly, were quite dull, but not all reunions are drab and dreary. Take That had a very successful reunion in the mid-2000s, which had many hits. But for every Take That, you get a Guns N' Roses reunion without Slash. Can you imagine such a thing? So that poses the question, do reunions work? Well, Brendan ABBA have had their reunion. They said they'd never do it. They're currently #1 in the charts.
Well, it just goes to show, doesn't it? They're like vintage, like good old wine. They've come back and they're still quite good. But I heard they were breaking up again.
Yes.
Is that not the case?
It's a one-time only reunion.
You know, what's the point in that? You've got to do it properly. Stay and carry on. But I don't know about reunions. I think once you've had your time, you should bow out gracefully and enjoy retirement.
It's certainly before John Lennon was murdered in New York and before George Harrison died, there was endless talk about a Beatles reunion. But you do wonder whether you leave well alone and that we just have a positive memory of that great band or that great TV show.
Exactly. When you were in your prime, everybody loved you, everybody liked you, you were top of the charts. That's when we want you. We don't want you when you're sort of a has-been.
Yeah, a bit over the hill.
Yeah, that's not just in music, that's in everything, I think.
Or is there one trick, which is not to have a comeback because you never went away, like the Rolling Stones?
Yes, you're always present. You're always there. But the Spice Girl reunion, I think is very interesting. In this woke age, isn't the phrase Spice Girls a little bit sort of objectifying?
Yes.
Shouldn't they be the Spice People?
Yes.
Exactly.
We should write to them.
I think this is an absolute minefield. I was in a coffee shop yesterday called the Barista Gentleman, and I thought they'll have to change that soon.
To person.
Yeah, exactly. Gender-neutral coffee drinker. But yeah, I mean, I mean, I don't know if are there bands that you're a fan of that have broken up?
Do you know, slightly before my time, but I would bring the Quo back. I think they're brilliant.
Yeah.
If I could resurrect someone and make them sing again, I'd have Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. They're just cool.
Yes.
You know, and I would have...
So you'd get the Rat Pack together.
I'd get the Rat Pack together, yeah.
So the Rat Pack, I'm feeling that, definitely.
Yeah, you can imagine that in a whiskey in a bar, where you can smoke, obviously.
Also, don't you think, though, the ultimate reunion would be Oasis?
Yes. Yes.
And I don't think they're quite over the hill, those two lads.
They're not. Actually, I'm going to completely reject everything I've just said. I would bring Oasis back.
That was a U-turn.
It was a U-turn.
Very unusual for a politician.
I would bring them back. They were the tunes we listened to in school. So, yeah, bring them back.
Ingrid, what do you think about these reunions? Can you recreate the magic?
Sort of, because I actually went to a reunion of... it was a one-off, Rod Stewart and the Faces. And... it was really like the magic was still there. So I really enjoyed it.
What were their faces like after all these years?
Small.
Smaller and more lines.
Actually, I think it's the small faces they were, actually. I can't remember if there was small faces.
Although Rod's still got it, hasn't he?
Well, he has still got it, I do believe. And so from that point of view, I think it was kind of like a nostalgia. Where I can't bear it is when they have disappeared. I think if you keep in touch with them, you see them ageing. So it's not such a terrible shock when suddenly they're there in front of you again. They've made the comeback. And then I just think, oh, God, you're a little bit paunchy. You know, you're trying to still be the rock star, but you've got like a little ponytail that's kind of like as thick as this. And actually it makes me feel a bit pukey. And I just think, oh, no, please. I think that's then a big mistake.
It's such a dilemma, isn't it, about whether artists should continue working once they're sort of past their prime, Emily?
Well, I think everybody should do whatever they want, whenever they want. But,
An unfashionable view these days.
I know.
You'll get cancelled for that.
I know. I probably already have been, multiple times. But I think all the best musicians are actually dead, aren't they? Apart from Axl, he's not dead. And I don't know whether you've seen that, the Blade Runner, which was a terrible, terrible Blade Runner franchise thing. But they actually had holograms of, like, Elvis and Marilyn Monroe, and I always thought that... I mean, I don't like the idea that they have Amy Winehouse concerts of a hologram, and that's really sinister. But I think that's kind of... I just like watching old rock concerts on YouTube.
That's a great way to do it. But I think it's nostalgia, isn't it? It's nostalgia. So if you go and see Duran Duran or I don't know, Bananarama, it's not only about the music and about the band, it's about where you were in your life at that time.
Yeah, and I think you can still get that, you know, because a lot of the music that means a lot to me by people who were, you know, were never around in my lifetime. I remember the first time I really got cried and got upset was when Freddie Mercury died. That was awful. I was in floods of tears.
Shocking.
Then.
Yeah. He was and is irreplaceable. Although Queen kept going and continued to tour with a different vocalist. Do you think that was the right thing to do?
No, I don't. But I think what was brilliant was that Bohemian Rhapsody movie, which was not a great movie, but the end performance when Rami Malek did that, it was
amazing.
Yeah,
that was.
It was.
Yeah.
It's a great
also, Rocketman, he played it very well as well.
Yeah.
I did go to see Cliff Richard. Yeah, actually, I was going to come on your show and I said, I'm so sorry, I'm seeing Cliff.
Oh, well, I can't compete with Cliff. I've got to say, I can't sing.
Sorry.
Where did you see Cliff?
At the Royal Albert Hall, private invitation, thank you very much.
Amazing.
Yeah. And that was fantastic. His voice is so strong and the music is timeless, and you're saying it's like, you know, it brings back memories and so on and so forth. And what was completely wonderful, and I do love it, I've been to so many of them, annual ones that he does, well, he hasn't for 2 years, of course, because of lockdown. But sort of like looking there, and there's this sea of grey-haired people, and I just think they were teenagers back in the time. I mean, I was sort of a bit of a later one, so I haven't gone grey quite yet. But it was
you're a baby compared to those guys.
I'm a baby, yeah. And it was just wonderful, and they were, it brought back, and they just came alive again. They're doing all the moves, you know, as they would have done in the 60s, the early 60s and everything. I loved it. Just watching him was an absolute joy, because they had gone back into a world of being young again. It was fantastic.
That's a lovely thought. Well, a simple scroll through a Spotify playlist, perhaps the status quo, a quick game of Candy Crush at a red light, or a browse through Instagram could leave drivers facing £200 fines from early next year. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps believes these changes would make it easier to prosecute drivers who ignore the rules. But is 6 points on your licence too much for using your phone? What do you think about this, Brendan? Because I think it's a bit harsh.
I think it is very harsh, and I think it's going to be completely unenforceable because we do not have the police to enforce it. Because
they're busy organising hate crime, aren't they?
Yes, quite. But as I understand it, you've got to be caught in the act of playing with your phone. Now, how are they going to do that? Unless they're going to have sort of little CCTV cameras in every car watching you, which, the way things are going, I would not be at all surprised if we don't end up with that. But also, there's another element here. I mean, if you're parked at traffic lights and you change your playlist, you're not driving, you're stationary. And also, Amazon delivery drivers and other commercial deliveries have these little screen things, and as they're driving along, they're organising their next delivery. And is that really a crime? Is that dangerous? No, they're experienced, they know what they're doing. I think this is once again another little intrusion.
Well, there's a big difference, isn't there, between holding the phone and you're on the steering wheel and you're having a row with the missus. This is different. You've got your phone maybe in a holster of some description. You know, it's in one of those devices, and you're at the red light and you just hit play onto the next track. What's the difference between that and changing the temperature of the car or switching on the radio?
Soddle, or playing with the indicators when you're going round corners. No difference at all. It's just, I don't know. It just seems to me to be another one of these intrusions where somebody somewhere has gone, oh dear, we need to wrap people up in a little bit more cotton wool. And as a result, this new proposal's come out. And I think you're going to find a lot of people really, really unfairly treated as a result of this.
Well, I think there's an issue, Emily, with laws that are not enforceable, because then they lose public support, public authority. The law becomes an ass.
Well, I just think they're trying to criminalise driving. I don't think they want people to have cars anymore. And I think they're just doing whatever they can, and the state is just getting completely out of control now. I mean, you wouldn't believe this is a Conservative government, nominally. I mean, who are they governing on behalf of? And, you know, all the people who are introducing these measures who think this is a fantastic idea, they all get driven around in private cars by drivers. They can do whatever they want on their phone constantly. It's just becoming... It is becoming so authoritarian on every single level. And unless we all push back and just say, no, we're not having this, it's going to get worse. Because they take a little bit away, and then, you know, it just gets... The more they get away with, the more they'll try and get away with. And it's just... It really beggars belief.
Of course, the government would argue, Ingrid, that this is about road deaths and road traffic accidents.
I tried to look for statistics, but I couldn't find any. But I don't think it is at all. I think it is another means of extracting money. I do think that probably the police won't be doing their things, as Brendan thinks, and because we're easy targets. You know, they'll be sitting on their little mounds and like waiting and whatever. But what I do find, and I do think it's very, very difficult. The thing is, if it's law and you're caught with a phone in your hand, that is it. And I've been stuck in traffic jams and you are going nowhere and just thinking, well, I'm going to do, like, my scramble and various, like, games like that. And I had a knock on the window and I said, but I'm not going anywhere. And I don't think I'll be going anywhere for a couple of hours. But what worries me, with these new cars where you get everything, you can put, you know, they're computerised, you could be turning on your hot water, You could be sort of like answering your doorbell because it's going to get like that. And you will be distracted from that. In any case, I think that's far more dangerous. I think we've just got to be a little bit sensible about this and, you know...
Yes.
Stopped if you're driving dangerously and posing a risk to anybody else. But if you're not, leave that person alone.
We are sovereign, free individuals. We're supposed to be. I think if you treat people like children, they will begin to behave like children. Couldn't agree with Emily more on that one. Let's have a look. Driving on the phone. Danny says last week to police, the police were driving around the M25 in HGVs to spot people on the phone at the wheel. So this is very much happening. I'll get to more of your thoughts on that one. But first, let's do this. Where shall we head now, Connor? We've got lots of stories to get through. Shall we go crustaceans? What is your crustacean of choice? Crab, crayfish or lobster? Well, the government are changing the law to recognise these crustaceans as sentient beings. This could have a massive effect on the lobster-eating world, as boiling them alive, industry practice, will be banned. So could you eat a lobster, Emily, that was alive and dropped into boiling water?
No.
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 Do you eat meat or fish?
No, I don't. I do eat fish. Because Kurt Cobain said it's okay to eat fish because they don't have any feelings. But apparently now, you know, lobsters do have feelings. Like, no crabs, no nothing.
Dr. Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, exactly. He knows
Animal welfare expert.
Absolutely. I don't know.
Well, of course, if you don't eat meat, I think that you can't be accused of hypocrisy. But Ingrid, I don't like the idea of a live animal, you know, boiled alive in a vat of boiling water.
No.
But on the other hand, I eat chicken and lamb and beef. God knows how they die.
Well, exactly. You hope that it's humane. I have a confession to make. You see, so coming from Norway and living by the fjords as we did, we would regularly have lobster and crab in the seasons. And that's what we did. We'd keep them alive during the day in sort of like a big thing of the salt water, seawater, and then would boil up a huge, great big thing of water and then plop them in, put the lid on top with the thing and just leave them. And we didn't think there was anything wrong with that. That was just the way that it was. But now, as I've got older and it's realising more and more, not even that it's the feelings, just that it was an animal and it was like it seemed to be a brutal way of killing. So then it changed to putting them in cold water and the water would warm up gently and then they would just kind of fall asleep and whatever. But you see, more and more, I just think... and you can't hit them on the head to kill them.
No,
that's the thing.
not.
Or a crab. You can with fish. You just knock them unconscious. I'm very good at that. I don't like doing it because I don't look in their eyes, though. But you just knock them out and then you slip their...
Crumbs. The bottom line, Brendan, is that life is cruel. We are at the top of the food chain. We breed animals, we grow them in order to eat them. So I think that to sort of cherry pick which particular animal slaughter is worse than another seems a little, I don't know, hypocritical. Double standards.
Well, especially when our, you know, crustacean mass murderer.
Yes, exactly right.
I think, yeah, obviously, I don't want to see this drive to stopping us all eating meat and fish continuing, but we want them to be killed and done away with calmly and humanely so they don't suffer. But I don't think we should be deprived of the right to enjoy lobster with mayonnaise and a little watercress salad or dressed crab.
Or thermidor.
Or thermidor. Yeah, that is a basic Englishman's right and we should not be taken away, but it should be done humanely.
There you go. What a great answer. Very diplomatic. Lots more to get through. After this, we're going to play our Great British Game Show. Very excited about this one. It's going to be a question about how eco-friendly do you think you are? Well, I'll be putting my panel and you at home to the test in a game of eco or econ. I'll see you after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking like a much colder day than we have seen for quite some time. Let's take a look at the details. A sunny start for many across southwest England, but also a cold one. A few showers are possible, being driven in on a brisk northerly breeze. Temperatures around 6 Celsius. Any morning frost will quickly clear from southeast England, A sunny but cold start to Sunday morning with the winds a little lighter here. Heavy showers will affect northern and western parts of Wales, some heavy with the risk of hail, driest and sunniest in the south and east. The Midlands will be largely dry but cold first thing tomorrow morning. Northwest England will also be largely dry and sunny, perhaps the odd shower towards the west coast. Morning highs of 7 Celsius. Cloudier skies are expected across northeast England, with showers running along eastern coasts. Some of the showers will be heavy at times, with the risk of hail. A cold and brisk northerly wind. Heavy showers across northern Scotland will continue through the morning, falling as snow over the mountain tops. Clear and frosty to begin across southern Scotland, but with lighter winds here. Northern Ireland will see plenty of sunny spells, but it will be a chilly start to the day, with the risk of a few showers too, a brisk northerly wind. Towards lunchtime, scattered showers will feed further south across the far east and west of the UK, with sunshine in between. And that's how the weather is shaping up tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
On email, Ray has emailed the programme. Ray, thank you for your email. Very considered. Mark, I guess that you have not lost a loved one by someone using a mobile phone whilst driving. That's a really fair point, Ray, and thank you for pointing that one out. Ken, hi, everyone. Great show as always. Mark, keep up the good work. Laughter is always key for a happy and stress-free life. Some people should get the stick out of their arse. They might feel better. Everyone looks amazing as always, although Ingrid is absolute dynamite.
Ooh,
well,
who was that?
It's Ken. I'll give you his email address after the show.
Thank you, Ken.
And his phone number's on there as well. So
excellent.
You're in there, Ken. And then finally, on bad customer service. Hi, Mark and panel. I have countless cases of long holds when complaining to my service providers. It's always, you may be on hold due to COVID. Surely companies should have sorted this out by now. It's a disgrace. Keep up the great work. Yours, Lee. Well, thank you, Lee, for that. Keep those emails coming. Now, most of us try to do our best for the environment. Professor Mike Berners-Lee, contributor to the Daily Mail, has compiled a list of well-known foods and products that we assume are eco-friendly and that most of us use and would consider eco. But how wrong you are. So recycling, walking instead of driving, plant-based diets, what do you do? Well, we've got a quiz for you. Nay, a game show.
Yes, it's time for another great British game show. Let's play Eco-Friend or Eco-Foe. And with me to do that is my fabulous panel of Ingrid, Emily and Brendan. So, folks, and you at home as well, can you identify what is your eco-friend or eco-foe? Starting with rice or banana, which is the eco-friend there? What's the most environmentally friendly thing, rice or banana?
Banana.
Oh, I would say rice.
I would have said.
Would you know? Why would you say rice?
Because you're producing much more in a smaller acreage and almost all year round, and that's it.
It's the wrong answer.
Oh!
I said banana.
You said banana, you clever
Bananas
boy.
are superior. Rice is a surprisingly high carbon staple. This is due to the methane that bubbles out of the flooded paddy fields and the carbon-excessive nitrogen fertilisers that are often applied. This means a kilo of rice can cause more emissions than burning a litre of diesel. There we are. So well done. The point goes to Brendan. Next up. OK, let's head to our next option. Eco-friend or eco-foe? Bath or shower? What do we think? Emily?
Well, it depends on how many baths you take. If you take
But I suppose,
one a year, like
well, if it was a
first.
bath a day or a shower a day, which would be more eco, do you think?
A shower. Well, it depends on how long you're in the shower. It's a trick question.
I suppose it is,
I would
really.
say shower.
Well, it's the right answer. Abandon your daily bath. Just have one a week. A quick dip can be anything from 500 grams to 1.5 kilograms of CO2, depending on your heating system. Far better to have a quick daily shower. 5 minutes is just 160 grams, a fraction of what a bath would cost you. Do you prefer the bath or shower? Do you have a preference? Brendan?
Shower's quicker.
Yeah, it is quicker.
Just like, yeah.
Can I tell you that I've only had cold showers for the last 2 years?
Have you?
Yeah.
Is that Wim Hof man? Have you been
Well,
following
apparently it's
him?
quite good for your immune
Yeah.
system, but it's just very refreshing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Standing
it was a
under-
little bit rough this morning, I'm not going to lie, because it's cold out there. The colder it gets outside, the colder the water becomes. But I must have saved a few quid, not only on carbon, but on energy as well.
Yeah.
Well, Ingrid swims in
I do
fjords and
every
bathes-
morning before breakfast in Norway. Whatever
Really?
the temperature
And is that
in the fjord.
in the winter, that would be ice cold.
I've been in -2 with ice floes around me.
How long
as
can
well.
you be in the water with those temperatures?
Do you know, I'm not sure, but women can last longer than men.
So I've heard.
Yes.
Story of my life. Please don't rub it in. No wonder she's divorced. Now, let's talk about the next option. Eco-friend or eco-foe? Berries or asparagus? Ingrid?
Oh, berries.
Yes.
Is the right answer. Yes, indeed. Perhaps the single most carbon-intensive winter vegetable is fresh asparagus, flown in from Peru. You could opt for British berries. Super nutritious, easier than fresh fruit to eat without wastage, as you can take just what is needed from the freezer. And I can tell you, as a big fan of the low-carbohydrate lifestyle, berries are very low in sugar as well. So let's do berries all round. OK, how about this? Dishwasher or washing up?
I know the answer to this.
Obviously, washing up's the best, isn't it?
Wrong. Dishwasher.
It's the right answer. Why do you say that?
Because I read it and I believed it.
You've read it. A highly efficient dishwasher always wins on carbon footprint over washing dishes in hot water, as long as you run a full load. So there you are. Cloth nappies or disposable? Emily, come on. This is obvious, isn't it?
You asked the non-mother on the panel, didn't you? I would say.
We don't do identity politics here. we will let you imagine on behalf of other people.
Well, I think that disposable nappies end up massively in landfills. It's terrible. So I'd say cloth nappies are more eco-friendly.
It should be the right answer, but it's the wrong answer.
Wow.
It's disposable nappies. A cloth nappy may seem better than disposable, but if washed at 90 degrees and tumble-dried to soften, it'll carry a higher carbon footprint than a disposable. 160 grams of CO2 per nappy, as opposed to 130
That's
for a disposable.
naughty. But what if you wash it at 40 degrees centigrade and you have a full load?
Well, then it will still be smelly after you've washed it. Now, how about this? This is our last one. Sourdough or Warburton's thick slice. So 2 options of bread there. Sourdough or Warburton's thick sliced?
Yeah, I'm going sourdough.
Sourdough.
I prefer sourdough.
It is sourdough. It's the right answer.
Good.
Yes, indeed. Homemade sourdough or locally baked artisan bread has a smaller carbon footprint than mass-produced sliced bread. 630 grams of CO2 per loaf compared to a kilogram for a mass-produced loaf of bread. More than 60% of the emissions of all bread production comes from the wheat cultivation, and most of that is the fertiliser used. A third comes from the milling and baking. Transport is a fraction if bought locally. Buy only what you need and always eat the crusts. Food waste is thrown into landfill and is bad news. How about a last quick one? Almond milk or soya milk?
It's revolting, both of them.
They're both disgusting. Is the right answer. But which is the eco-friend and which is the eco-foe?
I think the almond. Yes, I think almond is the eco-friendly. Yeah. Is it? Are we right?
OK, well, Connor, can you confirm the answer to that one? Is it almond, is it soy? We know that Cal has been working on this competition all afternoon, so the answer is about to come in. Almond or soy, which is it to be? It is almond is the eco-friend and not the soy, and that's because of all of the forest that has to be chopped down to grow soya. But that said, almonds require enormous amounts of water too, so you can't win. Just by existing, you're polluting the planet. Well, let me tell you the result of that game. It's a draw between Ingrid and Brendan. Yes. That's right. They're sharing the spoils. Emily comes in a worthy third. My thanks to the whole team, including Francis, who was a hero last night, shifting cameras around at high speed. But thanks to my whole team, and most importantly to you for your company. We'll be back tomorrow, and TV legend Sue Cook is with me at 10. See you then.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Coming up this evening, with Austria locking down the unvaccinated and other European states considering their options, I'll be asking whether this latest move is a dividing line. We meet this week's Great Britons, a mother and son duo this week who've raised thousands for charity. And I'll be joined by the journalist Nick Wallace, who spent a decade working with the campaign to bring the massive injustice that was the Great Post Office scandal to light. That's all to come on Neil Oliver Live. But first, your latest news headlines.
Hello, I'm Karen Roberts. These are your latest headlines. Demonstrators have blocked 2 areas in London in a show of solidarity for 9 jailed Insulate Britain protesters. They're describing the so-called Highway 9 as political prisoners. Arrests have been made at Vauxhall Junction and police are diverting traffic away from Lambeth Bridge, where 40 people have staged a sit-down protest. 4 of them have glued themselves together. Insulate Britain spokesperson Craig Scudder told GB News many environmental groups are now backing their campaign.
What we're experiencing today is not an Insulate Britain thing. This is, I think, going to be a show of ordinary people from a variety of different environmental groups and backgrounds just coming to push back and rebel.
Video has been released purportedly showing missing Chinese tennis player Peng Shuai having dinner with friends. The video, which can't be independently verified, was posted by a state media journalist on Twitter. It doesn't give details on when the footage was taken. The Wimbledon doubles champion disappeared nearly 3 weeks ago after accusing a former top government official of sexual assault on social media. The Women's Tennis Association welcomed the video's release but said it remains unclear if Peng Shuai is free and able to make decisions and take actions on her own. Taxpayers could be liable for up to £335 million after a government-backed bank failed to properly scrutinise collapsed lender Greensill Capital. An MP's report found British business bank checks on the company were woefully inadequate. Former Prime Minister David Cameron was an advisor, and it's emerged that he used his position to make dozens of calls to senior government officials, including the Chancellor. He tried to secure funds during the pandemic before the lender's collapse, leading to several investigations. At least 2 people were injured when Dutch police fired warning shots during riots in Rotterdam. Water cannon were also used to disperse crowds demonstrating against tighter coronavirus restrictions. The government says it wants to introduce a law that allows businesses to restrict the COVID pass system to those who are fully vaccinated, excluding those who test negative. There's doubt surrounding Novak Djokovic's place at the Australian Open. That's after officials confirmed all players will have to prove that they've been double jabbed to compete in the tournament. The Grand Slam champion has repeatedly refused to disclose his vaccination status. The 34-year-old Serb has suggested he won't play if the vaccine ruling is enforced. You're right up to date. Now back to Neil Oliver Live.
Mark Twain said history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. For 5 days this week, Austria locked down its unvaccinated people. Almost 2 million were only allowed out to work and to buy food and such. Many of those unvaccinated were therefore working in shops and cafes and restaurants and so on, as lowly servants, if you will. But as soon as their shifts ended, they could not be in those same places, certainly not as customers. Even before getting to the morality or otherwise of such rules, on what planet does that strategy even make sense? They were fit to serve the vaccinated their coffees and to bag their purchases, but they were deemed otherwise unclean and unfit to be mixing with the good, clean people. Austrians interviewed on the street were frighteningly unconcerned, unmoved, even supportive of the social hobbling of their fellow citizens. The virus must be stopped, they shrugged, ignoring